Well, good morning, everyone. It is Friday, March 22nd. We are meeting, the full board is here. So good morning to my fellow board members. Good to see everyone. Good morning to the members of the public who are here. And I do know that we have folks online through WebEx that have joined us as well. And I'll ask for Ms. Baudet to call a quorum.
Christine, could you please take roll call?
Sure. John Harabedian,
Here.
Yang-Ping Chen, Ruben Osorio,
Here.
Francisco Kim, Shudong Lee,
Here.
Dr. Amy Mateki. We do have a quorum. Everyone's present.
Great. Thank you so much. As far as my remarks, it's great to be back in Sacramento. We will be at different locations throughout this year for the future meetings, and we'll kind of announce more on that in the near future. But it's good to be back up here, and I look forward to a productive meeting and to the agenda items we're about to tackle. So moving on to number 3, does anyone, we're looking at the minutes from the October meeting, does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes? And if not, we can do a motion and then we can take public comment. Do you have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Yes, I take a motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We want to open it up for public comment? We'll just wait for the online as well.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment in WebEx, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please.
Christine, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Sure. John Harabedian,
Yes.
Yang-Ping Chen,
Yes,
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim, Shudong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki. Yes. The motion passes to approve the meeting minutes.
And just for, these microphones are a little new. If you want to use the microphone, I think there's just a button at the bottom. If everyone wants to make sure when they're talking that the green light is on. So I can't, are you picking up everyone? Okay. Got it. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 4, and that'll be a budget update. Well, it's the budget update, licensing report, and the enforcement report. I'll pass it over to our executive director.
Thank you kindly. I believe Brad Lancioni is on the line to provide the budget report.
Yes, good morning. My name is Brad Lancioni, and I want to thank the board and the executive staff for allowing me to present on agenda item 4A, the board's expenditure projections and fund condition statement. First, I'm going to start with the board's expenditures, page 19 of your materials. These projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 7. This report includes 2022 through 23 actual expenditures in green, as well as 2023 through 24 budgeted and projected expenditures in blue and orange. As we move to the end of the document, you will see the board had a beginning base budget of approximately $4 million and is projected to spend a total of approximately $3.7 million, creating a reversion to the board's fund of $417,000 with a reversion percentage of 10.31%. The next document I'll be going over is the board's revenue projections, page 20 of your materials. This report includes receipts collected through January and provides the projected revenue to year end. I'll go further into the projections as we transition to the next slide. The next slide, page 21 of your materials, is the board's fund condition statement. As a reminder, we read this document top to bottom and left to right. The left column is the board's prior year 2022 through 23 actuals. It shows the board began 2022 through 23 with a balance of $3.475 million. The board collected $4.228 million in revenues, with $702,000 from initial license fees, $3.093 million from license renewals, and $433,000 collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board expended $3.549 million, which includes $434,000 in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. The board closed 2022 through 23 with a reserve balance of $4.154 million, or 13 months in reserve. For the current year, 2023 through 24, the board projects revenues at just over $4.1 million, with $654,000 projected for initial license fees, and a little over $3 million from renewal fees, and $421,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board's 2023 through 24 expenditures are based on the governor's budget, with FM7 projections at about $3.8 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of just over $4.4 million, or 13.5 months in reserve. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projections as we continue to close fiscal months in the current fiscal year. A few things to note for the board's fund condition. The fund condition is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in future years is a result of personnel service adjustments. These include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The budget office includes conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these incremental adjustments. You will also note revenue is projected static in the out years. Lastly, I'd like to note to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would create cost pressure on the fund. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's fund condition statement and keep an open line of communication with the board's executive staff for any future needs or expectations. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for allowing me to present at today's meeting, and I'll now be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the members? I have one, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you. We notice with the budget projections from the governor's office that the reserves are still there, obviously, and they haven't been touched. I do know that with the state's budget deficit, there has been plans to kind of meet the deficit through reserves. It looks like our reserves are not being touched, and I just had a question as to whether we should, have any sort of preparation just in case the reserves would be called upon to balance the budget.
I don't have an answer to that right now. Harmony, would you be able to answer that? I believe my manager, Harmony, needs to be unmuted.
Good morning. Thank you for your question. So the governor's budget display on the governor's website is based off of a point in time of the budget, and the projections that we're showing today includes the through fiscal month 7 projections, and so it's based off a point in time. So it's kind of updating each fiscal month based off of the expenditures that the for the board. So there's no concerns at this time with the reserve balance, and it's not being, the reserve balance is not being affected by the freeze. It's just that we are being more cautious with our spending. So you might find that your reserve balance may go up because the board is spending less expenditures than in prior year as part of us being more cautious on our spending based off of that budget letter.
Got it. That's helpful. And the governor's office hasn't said anything to our board or any other boards about any sort of preparation in terms of potentially devoting some of the reserves to larger, kind of budget shortfalls?
Yeah, no, not at this time. We have not received any communication on any loans required from any of the special fund programs.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Want to open? Go ahead, Dr. Mateki. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just know in the past that there's some kind of rules how many months you can reserve, right? So what's the maximum?
We've
The
never. exceeded-
24 months is the maximum months in reserve that any
Perfect.
fund can have.
Perfect. Thank you.
However, certain programs may have less, but the standard is 24 months.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to go through A, B, and C before public comment, or did you? Oh, doing the legislative. So with 4A, 4B, and 4C, do you want to go through all those before public comment, or do you want to?
I feel like it's best practice to do it, given that they're a little bit different topics
Okay.
for each one.
Yeah, that's what. So let's just open this up quickly. If anyone has a public comment on the budget.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment in WebEx, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please, thank you. So we'll move on to 4B, the licensing.
Public comment from here.
Oh, yes. Is there any public comment in the room? Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on to 4B, the licensing report. Mr. Hurd.
Good morning. Good to see you all. So I'm going to give the licensing report and education report today. So in Q2 23-24, our total number of active licensees was 7,708. Inactive, we had 2,337. And then delinquent, we had 1,000. No, wait. Let's see what I'm going to say. Delinquent, we had 1,685. And so that gives us a total of clear and renewable licenses at 11,730 licensees. And then in Q2, there was 117 license cancellations. And then moving on to our new licensees, the initial license applications approved in Q2 were 93. There was no denials of those. We had 1,252 acupuncture license renewals. And then we also had 4,528 active wall licenses, and then 305 initial wall licenses and 389 wall license renewals. And just as an overall trend, if you look back for our Q1 numbers, and then our actually Q3, Q4 of 22-23, you can see that we've had a constant increase in both active licensees and our clear licensees going on, decreases in delinquent. There's been back and forth a little bit with our canceled licenses in terms of that stuff. But the trend is right now is that we've been increasing our license population. So that's That's encouraging for our fund for sure, and for our continued existence here. And then for the continuing education, we received for new CE provider applications, we received 19. Of those applications, none were denied. CE provider renewals, that's a renewing population, is 101. And then for course applications in Q2 alone was 1,406. Course applications approved was 840. And just to kind of drill down on what's going on with that one, when we receive them, that's when those applications hit the desk. But when they're asking for it, because the courses are approved for a year, the providers can set an approval date that they're going to, so it'll give them the time where they can run their course there. So that's where those are numbers are different. So, so the 1,406 number is what our desk is, our CE desk is receiving, and then the approvals are just showing when they're coming in time. So those are ones they're choosing to be starting their course in that quarter, in quarter two. So just to kind of understand that statistic better. There were no course denials during that period. And then the total active number of CE providers is 295. That's another number that has been slowly creeping back since the pandemic there was a fairly good drop at that point. And then moving on to our educational and training program, which is our school approvals. For the application for board approval of curriculum, we received no new applications in Q2 23-24. There was one incomplete application in that period. One application for board approval for curriculum was approved. And then there was one school that had lost approval in that quarter as well. And then moving on to our tutorial program, the applications that we've received for tutorial programs was 9. And then new program approvals were 3 occurred. Programs completed was 2. And then terminated or abandoned was 6, with a total of 47 tutorial programs in approved programs in operation right now. So that's the licensing report. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the exam statistics too.
Why don't we just pause there
Okay,
before
sure.
going to the exam
Yeah, let's do it.
stats? Any questions on any of these kind of 4 buckets? I had a quick question on the first licensing report. So right now we have, active members, 7,700, give or take.
Yeah.
And you have active wall licenses of 4,500, give or take. So there's, there's a delta there of like 3,000 active acupuncturists who
Right.
don't have a wall license, which is required, right?
True.
So what exactly, and we've talked about this, what do we do to promote more of our active licensees to actually get a wall license? Because I mean, we instituted the wall license, what was it, 2 years ago? How do we make sure everyone is at least actively seeking one, in the process of getting one? I mean, I know that we've discussed how to kind of better roll it out, but
Yeah. So we've made the rules prominent on our website. I know staff, when they're talking, when they interview people with renewal questions, bring up that requirement, and there still is some lack of knowledge for our licensees about that being a requirement, particularly with confusing with the old kind of engraved wall license that never changed, the new one. But we do see the numbers going up. We definitely have committed to doing some more outreach to do that. The other thing that we're doing too now is, it's routinely, if there's an enforcement case, we will enforce the wall license at that point, right? So a lot of times there might be some simple complaint, but along with that, we'll discover that there's no wall license. And so then that'll bring it to the attention. And that's kind of what I have with it. Do you have anything else on that, Ben?
We've been wanting to ramp up slowly, and being clear in our communication. And so we're starting to take in the future a more direct approach. I'd be looking to talk to the associations and ask them to talk to their members and inform them that this is a requirement. And then we're updating our website as well, so we want to prominently display that once again. So it'll be an outreach effort and then a continued communication effort.
because how often are licensees renewing their actual license?
It's every 2 years.
So, I mean, have we required every time you renew your license to actually just as part of it, just get a wall license?
It's part of the renewal process, is it
Yeah,
not?
so, well, actually,
System.
when they're initially licensed, they do get a wall license for no charge for their first one. And so then that brings them on. And then the next time they renew, that wall license would renew with their license unless they made some change with it. Um, in the renewal process, if they don't have a wall license, it will not renew. So they have to start with an initial license. And so that's where our outreach needs to be.
Oh, that's interesting. So if you get a wall license with your initial license, and then every time you actually just get your license reissued, you get a new wall license?
Well, it renews, the wall license
Well-
renew. Now, when
So
the
how is there
subsequent wall
3,000 people?
licenses, they do have
Yeah.
to pay for.
It just seems like, okay, so I guess that's where I'm getting confused. It just seems like when you're renewing your license, you're getting a new wall license as well.
No, it's a renewal wall license unless you haven't had one. Like when we first did that, nobody had a wall license. So the first step was having an initial wall license to deal with that.
Got it.
And so that's where we really need to do our outreach on that. And actually the numbers are worse because there's a number of people have there's some people that have 2 and 3 wall licenses, right? So we do have some work and there has been some resistance in general and other pressures, particularly financial pressures and those kinds of things.
Another thing about the way this was implemented, the law made it a 2-year process of people
Right.
as they're renewing from 2021 to 2023. So it just really ended in December. At the time of their renewal, that's when they would be required to do it. So we weren't actively trying to enforce anything, but just really outreach and say, hey, everybody, it's time to get your wall license. It's part of the renewal process. So it does pop up. They're actively declining to get one at that point. But again, that's if they have a place of practice. If they're at home or just like practicing, they drive to their locations, they're not technically required to have one, but most acupuncturists have a clinic.
Any questions?
So as I read the renewal form, if you don't renew your license, there's a consequence. If you don't renew or apply for the wall license, I don't read the language like there's no consequence. So I think somebody will just, okay, see what happened, or get a notice, or you get fined, but we don't have a language for wall license for enforcement.
We could see about adding that language to at the time of renewal process, because there is one of our enforcement is keeping your address updated with the board, and that's a condition of licensure. So
And also, we haven't, in order to charge a delinquency fee on the wall licenses, we do have to send out renewal reminders to their address of record. And we have been working on that with DCA to get that implemented as a new piece. There has been some struggles with our print vendor, and that's a whole nother can of worms. So we've provided everything we need. We just haven't got it in place yet. But there will be, if you don't renew your wall license, then there will be a delinquency fee at some point, and it would be $25 because we're related to half the fee.
Yeah, I think to Dr. Chen's point, it just seems like there's very little downside to not getting the wall license. Like, we're not really enforcing that. Maybe there's a $25 penalty at some point, but
We are enforcing it. In general with enforcement, we're not going through our, licensees and looking for violations. So we do enforce we don't go fish for it. So when it comes up, then they'll
Sure.
be there. So, every complaint that's there is evaluated for a wall license. So it is being enforced, right?
well, now's the time to send messages to our licensee list to remind them, since we've finished with 2023, there's no more timing for a lax situation here, and we can start
Right.
outreach.
And typically the citation for not having a wall license is $250. So it's not nothing, I think it's, more outreach and more enforcement, the word will get out there. And then also the licensee population will accept the new requirement, really.
have we ever issued a citation for not having an active wall license?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right, well, that's good to know. Okay, any other
Within
questions?
the last month,
Is that right?
I can
Okay.
attest to that.
Any questions about continuing education or education training programs?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. McKay.
Mine is more like a comment, and I will go back to talk about how we displace this report. Recently, I have public from other state actually complimented. So it's so clear, how transparent this board is. So I just wanted to give the staff and also the EO congratulations, the California, we really want to lead the way from every level, even with how we report it. So I just want to make this statement. And also I can see the numbers started going up with the licensees and also the CE coordinator. So seems like more practitioner started recovering, from the pandemic. So it's a good moment. You guys probably will get busy. So thank you.
And just one comment on that too with the CE providers. Even though the providers have dropped, we haven't dropped in courses. So it does feel like the providers we have ample ability to provide the courses for that marketplace right now.
Great. Do we want to move on to the exam results?
Okay, sure. I mean, I just want to say before I present this one, at the last board meeting, we didn't present the January 1, 23 through June 30th, 23 statistics, but they have been posted to the website. So if people want to look back and see that, you can go under the Students tab, Examination, and then choose Statistics, and you can review those reports going back as far as you want. They're complete in there. But this report is for the period of 7/1/2023 through 12/31/2023. And so I'm just going to, you can see the listings by school, but I'm just going to give the aggregate totals just for the overall, because that's how we kind of look at it, right? So for our first time test takers, there was 150 applicants passed, 48 failed, and that gave a pass rate of 76%, which is right in the area that we're typically looking for, somewhere between maybe 68 and 75, something like that. And then for test takers overall, there was 174 overall. Of those, 81 failed, and that's a 68% drop. I mean, a 68% pass rate for that group, the second time takers. And then for our statistics by language for 7/1/2023 through 12/31/2023, the overall by language was there was 174 passes of in general for this one, and 81 fails. It's the same numbers as our overall totals, but by language it is the same percentage, 68%. So what this report is talking about, what kind of showing the variances by language, and they're fairly close too, with Chinese at 75% pass rate, English at 65% pass rate, and Korean at 72% pass rate. So, and that concludes the reporting I have on the exam.
Thank you for that. Any questions?
So I'd like to know what's the grand total passing rate? What is considered normal from one number to one number is considered normal?
Well, it's not what's normal. The way that our test is developed, that every question is tested. Oh, I said the way the exams development, they develop questions, and then when people take the test, 25 questions on that test are tested, and they'll test those questions to get a certain, if it's too easy, they'll eliminate it. If it's too hard, they'll eliminate it. And they're looking between like 65% and 75% for those individual items. Now, if you put them all together, maybe in time it's a little bit different like that, but every question is tested that way and to kind of hit in that range based on its experience with licensees taking their tests, right? So we just heard a presentation from Contractors Board, and they were talking about some language challenge or whatever, and their pass rate on their exam was something like 30% or something like that. So they were in a different place. We feel, and from our Office of Professional Exam Services, They're really feeling good about the exam in terms of what the statistics are, the way that it's working with our test centers, the availability of the test. And then also our ability now with working with OPS to offer the retest within 120 days rather than 180 days it was there. So people have a easier access to retake it and pass too as well. So overall, it's very stable with the California acupuncture licensing exam right now for us. I mean, we've been working with that group and it's just improved. So
Thank you, Ms. Heather.
thanks.
Okay, so I just want to see, is it true now you go to take the exam, you will get a pass or fail at the same day?
Yes.
Did you heard about that?
Yes, yes.
I was very surprised, so that was a really interesting, and as a students is very happy,
It's scary to
when
push
they
that
pass.
submit button. You're going to
So-
know right there.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And the second one I want to see, I look at the language, it's great. California, we have this diverse the language, Chinese, Korean, and the English part. But I look at the passing rate and how this English passing rate is only 65%. I know maybe I don't know what's the passing rate before, but is something can help to increase to 70%, for the English speaking, or is maybe the schools, the one will start to help their applicants or candidates.
It's really hard to provide an answer. All those numbers are acceptable that we're seeing there in terms of that stuff. I do think that native Chinese speakers have an advantage in terms of understanding it and just their ability to process information kind of in that way. Just because of the language piece, it's kind of an advantage to speak Chinese when you're talking about Chinese medicine, And I also know the Korean population has been very committed. I've been with a number of Korean practitioners, and they write their notes in Korean, but they understand Chinese too, and they really value the Chinese part of it. So, but I can't really give a real clean answer on that one. And I don't know, it's maybe more of a message for the schools, about that pass rate than the board, because we feel that the test is performing well. So why English people are struggling is to be seen, it's, but that number is helpful. Maybe we can have English study groups.
Thank you.
Question.
I think your mic's not on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I see the number of applicants is decreasing since pandemic.
The number of,
The
Examiners,
examin-
examinees.
Yeah.
examination, right?
that's true.
We did see a drop, yeah.
But actually, just as the trend is with licensing, that has been there. And there was a number of students that didn't enter the program during the pandemic, and there's also a number of students that was really just going into practice because of the environment at that time. But our exam unit is busier than they've been now, so that we're seeing that trend changing.
Yeah, it's because I see some of the schools, first-time takers are kind of steady, but others are, some of them are 0, some of them are 1. And I'm concerned, are they up to all the compliance in terms of curriculum, accreditation and all that?
They are. Everybody here, these are all schools that have curriculum approved by us, that have a relationship of accreditation with ACOM and have a permit to operate with BPPE. So they're there. Internally, and we've talked about it, it's like having some kind of ongoing compliance project with the schools would be a good thing. Now, because of the new name changes with ACOM, it's driven a number of the schools back to us to get approval because the name change is significant. They have to resubmit that application, and often we pick up some other stuff. And we've been working with them to get into compliance and to work with that. So, I think it would behoove us to have some, re-evaluation on a regular basis, like recertification every 5 years, or every year if there's any curriculum changes, you automatically submit those in, those kinds of things. So we'll see how far we can go with more school oversight.
Yeah, the one of the concern I have is California Acupuncture Board has the is oversighting on clinical training on these schools.
We have enforcement authority over the clinical training, but we're not doing site visits to check out their program. We're just approving their curriculum, and their clinical portion is included in that curriculum.
Yeah, because I'm saying like some schools have very like even one applicants or a very small number of school enrollment. How can they survive, and how I'm
Right.
concerned about their quality of education, because there's not enough students, and maybe they can't even do much of clinical training. So I think there's some concerns. I think.
Well, and within our education department, there has been concerns about evaluating clinical training from a desk situation, right? Because it's a live environment. It's probably the most important part of their education. And with the didactic part, we can see black and white what their syllabus is, what they're doing. We can get through that one. With the clinical work, so much of it is what's really going on to see it, right? So that is a concern. We've had a concern with that, but as Ben said, we haven't been doing site visits. Yeah, this is just an ongoing discussion. I'll just leave it there.
Well, I'd also like to point out on this report, we have stars next to some of the programs, and those shut down for one reason or another. Maybe they lost accreditation, not enough students. Additionally, some of these programs are out of state, so not everybody attending those programs are going to be applying for the California acupuncture exam. It is usually a longer program if they're taking it out of state compared to their fellow students or fellow cohort. And so you don't see as many numbers from out of state applicants.
Do they still have if someone wants to take the test, pen and paper, is there still an option to do that?
It's an option. It's a special accommodation, but you can request it, and you
Got
can
it.
actually request extra time. You can request a private room. There's a number of accommodations that can be afforded to our test takers,
Right.
our candidates.
Why don't we open it up for public comment, both here in the room and online?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment on WebEx, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Here in the room, any public comment? Where would we like public comment from? Just right here at the table?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for all your good work. So just wanted to go back on the wall license situation, and just for you to be aware that all our new graduates since 2022, 2 years ago, are well aware that is covered in laws and ethics, and it's tested on our in-house exam. So that is definitely covered. So everyone that is just graduating now knows very well what they need to do about the wall license. So just wanted you to be aware of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we can move on to 4C, enforcement report. Thank you, Jay.
All right, for the enforcement report, this is for Q2, October through December of 2023. Substance abuse, these are for complaints and convictions and arrests received. The total count: 1 for substance abuse, drug and mental/physical impairment, 1 for unsafe or unsanitary conditions, 3 for fraud, 1 non-jurisdictional, 11 for incompetence/negligence, no other types, 6 for unprofessional conduct, which we've separated there, And this was at the request of the board for examples and at the request of our stakeholders so they can see more of what the unprofessional conduct qualifies for. 3 sexual misconduct, 3 unlicensed or unregistered, 6 for criminal charges, all from licensees. And then in our investigation phase, a total of 35 received in that quarter, 60 were closed, and 309 are pending. I'm happy to report that the 2 staff that we've had in for over the last year are starting to really make headway through all of the cases that have been pending on investigations. So we're really encouraged by that. Thank you, team. Turning to the second page for the performance measures, I wanted to note that staff got together and we wanted to redo the language here so it's more in plain English, so it's not so specialized for Department of Justice or for the department itself, because the department collects all our enforcement data as well. And we wanted to make sure that our licensees, our board members, and our stakeholders are more clearly understanding what is being captured here. So you'll see some redefinitions or changes in what the descriptions are, and it's just simplifying it. For complaints received, we got 29 in the last quarter. 6 of those, as noted earlier, were for convictions and arrest for a total of 35. Our intake cycle time, that is the days to close or assign a complaint once we've received it, is down to 4 now. For performance measure 3, this includes intake, investigation, and case outcome for complaints not referred to the Attorney General. We had 62 desk investigations closed, 1 field investigation closed, total investigation closed at 63, and the average day to close all those investigations at 361, just under a year. For the aging of non-AG cases, that is the cases that do not go to the Department of Justice, 12 closed in under 90, 5 closed under 180, 12 closed between half a year and a year, 32 between a year and 2, 1 between 2 and 3 years, and 1 case closed that was more than 3 years. And then for non-AG discipline, we issued 1 citation, and then the average day to complete that citation was 302 days. And there were no license denials in this quarter. Turning to the next page, we go to performance measure 4. This is the average number of days to close cases submitted to the Attorney General for formal disciplinary action. We did not have any final orders in that time, in this last quarter. Current AG actions are as of quarter 2, 3 for AG cases pending, 1 statement of issues filed. And then if you go down to the bottom of that table, we have 1 item was closed without disciplinary action. Next table, these numbers represent the Attorney General cases closed in the specific timeframes, and we didn't have any of those closed last quarter. Next table, other legal actions taken that just don't fit into that AG actions up above. We didn't have any PC-23s or any interim suspensions. And then finally, we included the last table, which is tracking our probationers. So now we can see that we have a total number of 10 licensees on probation with one subsequent discipline final order. Any questions from the board members?
I have a question, Mr. Padilla.
Please.
So unlicensed or unregistered, those 3 people, they don't have any license or they have some other license?
They don't have any license. If they do have, although, Christine, does it count when they do have like a physical therapy license, let's say? Yeah. But at that point, we receive the complaint and then we refer that complaint to that specific board because they have jurisdiction over that licensee.
So if they have other license, then we refer their own board. If they don't have any license, then ACUPUNCTURE board take over.
That's right. We will take action on that.
Thank you very much for clarification.
So from the other board, do we get a report back?
We
You know?
do,
Okay,
typically.
thank you.
So we currently have 309 investigations still pending.
That's right.
And how many of those will turn into cases, right? Where it goes beyond just an investigation and we're actually doing some sort of enforcement follow-up?
It's hard to say. It really depends on what results from the desk investigation. It kind of rises up as it gets more, as we identify more challenging behaviors, it then gets moved up, or if it requires formal discipline at that point. It's usually found out during the desk investigation phase, unless it's a very harmful situation like sexual misconduct or harm to other folks. Then that tends to go straight to discipline.
And do we know how many cases we have now that are over 3 years? Non-AG cases? I don't think it'd be reflected in this number because these are,
No.
yeah.
I don't, but we can take a look and report back to you.
Yeah, I just think one thing that pops out is the AG cases, the average days to complete, I mean, it's 3 to 4 years, right? And that could be on the AG side, obviously, a lot of it, but it is a long time.
It does. It is a long time. What has influenced this number for us was there's a number of examination fraud cases that we were processing starting from 2013, 2014, and they're now, a number of them have slowly closed over the years, but we're still in the process of closing them. Some of the challenges there's working with the US government and then foreign countries' governments to get records. So that takes time and we just have to wait for it to resolve.
Any other questions? Why don't we open up for public comment on 4C, the enforcement report, here in the room and online?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it looks like we do have a request for public comment. I have Philip Yang, and Philip, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Yeah, this is Philip Yang. I'm representing ACMA. We do have a case to report, but I believe the board know this case. Currently, there is a assembly member. He had the bill, this is AB 796, which allowed the athletic trainers to do the practice of dry needling. And CISOMA, they find this case and report to the CAB, and CAB did the enforcement. But here, they stopped the practice already. They practiced in Stanford, and but right now we are trying to get them contact with the assembly member Weber, so that he can add in the scope of practice to exclusive the practice of this. They originally have the medicine, medical practice and PT, chiropractor. There's no acupuncture. We encourage them to include the acupuncture as their exclusive scope of practice. Here, I just want to first thanks the enforcement from CAB, and the second is we do just remind everyone or to pay close attention to someone who don't have this legal practice to practice acupuncture.
30 seconds.
Thanks.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, Tiffany Tufty. And Tiffany, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
My name is Tiffany Tuckey. I'm the president for CSOMA. I would like to reiterate what Philip Young has just said. On behalf of CSOMA,
Can
wanted
I
to
just interrupt really quickly? I didn't want to interrupt the first speaker. I don't actually think these comments are relevant to what we just went over. I think this is more of a legislative issue that you guys are bringing up, not an enforcement issue. So can we just wait on these comments until the next item, which would be item number 5, the legislation report? And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just don't think actually.
The only issue,
it's-
Alex, is that there's no enforcement report item number for AB 796. So we did want to bring it to the board's attention as these were items that were brought to the board via comment from our members. So
Got
I
it.
wasn't sure.
Okay.
if we
No,
should
it's
talk
fine.
about
Go
it
ahead and
now
finish.
or
I'm
at
sorry.
the end of the meeting.
No, go ahead.
Just because it's not publicly listed on the agenda, so I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of what was happening.
Got it.
Is that okay to continue?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention the numerous calls we as associations have received regarding the illegal practice of athletic trainers performing dry needling at the major college universities around California. Their athletes are becoming injured by these athletic trainers who do not have training. Many of these students do not want to come forward to report these issues as in fear of losing their career as an athlete or are unaware of this unsafe practice of acupuncture without licensure. Our members who practice closely in these universities are being told there is no clear law to prevent ATs from performing needling. We encourage our members to submit a complaint to the CAB. However, this has become a more global issue, and we are here today to advocate on behalf of the profession to ensure this is being addressed on a more serious level, as this is the illegal practice of acupuncture without licensure. The ATs, just to bring to the board's awareness, the ATs have a bill, AB 796, which CSOMA and the AACMA has publicly opposed unless amended. We have a stance to
30 seconds.
Thank you. Under section 2529.8.3a, the article shall not authorize an athletic trainer to perform or practice medicine, physical therapy, chiropractic, or occupational therapy. However, acupuncture is not listed. We encourage the CAB to make a public comment or have a position statement on this bill and support CSOMA in their attempt to ratify this bill. We request to add acupuncture, dry needling, or the inability to pierce the skin to this bill. We strongly encourage the CAB to pay attention to this article. Thank you.
All right, and this is the moderator. I have a request from Sung Hee Lee. And Sung, it looks like I have you logged in twice, so I'm going to try the first one, the first login. All right, and you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you for hearing. I'm Akama secretary. My name is Sung Hee Lee. Because I requested written exam we needed. We are getting the information from the student because of a computer system, not use the computer test. So many students, when they go to the computer test and they click the wrong button. So they failed the first test. So we need the olden style, so we need to request the written exam allowed, please.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears that is all the requests for public comment in the WebEx. Would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Great. We'll move on to item number 5, the legislation report. Oh, I'm sorry. And just to be clear, just so we're on the same page, when I call for public comment, that's in the room, that's online. If you have a public comment in the room, please come up to the table. I'm just assuming that at the same time it's
I
happening.
will say for the recording, just maybe.
Oh, okay. No public comment in the room, just for the sake of the recording. And so we will close item number 4 and then move on to item number 5. And then we can there was an item that was just publicly commented on that I think is more relevant to what we're talking about here potentially, so we can sort of address that whenever you think is appropriate. But just note that the two public comments were commenting really on a piece of legislation, and we're now going into the legislative report. So thank you, Ms. Brothers.
Thank you, President. So I just wanted to get started on the 2024 legislation of interest by pointing out that currently the legislature is on recess for spring. They will reconvene April 1st. We have 3 bills that we're going to go over today. And just also want to point out that we're early in the year. So there are a lot of bills that we're tracking that are in spot form with just some minor non-substantive changes. But right now, the following that we have brought to the board today are more substantive changes. Also, you'll see that we haven't included any recommended motions as there will likely be changes. But this doesn't preclude the board from taking a position if that is what you guys decide. So the first bill is AB 2269, brought by Flora, board membership qualifications, public members. The summary of the bill, the bill would amend Section 450 of the BMP Code. This bill would revise the statutory qualifications for public members of boards within the department. Specifically, this bill would limit exemptions related to the requirements that a public member not be an employer, officer, director, or a substantially full-time representative of an employer or group of employers of any licensee of a board, maintain a contractual relationship with a licensee of a board or an employee of a licensee of a board, or a representative of the employee for a period preceding their appointment. This bill would also reduce this period from 5 years to 3 years prior to appointment and stipulate that these requirements would apply to public members upon appointment or reappointment on or after January 1st, 2025. So I'm just going to jump to this board, or this bill doesn't really have a great significant impact to the board itself, since the vetting process is not on board staff. So the vetting process falls with the Governor, Senate Rules Committee, and Speaker of the Assembly. So there also is no fiscal impact that we project related to this bill. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. Do you want to do public comment on each bill or at the end?
No, at the
Okay.
end.
So I'll move on to AB 2862. This is brought by Gibson, licenses African American applicants. AB 2862 would add section 473 under a new division 1.1 titled Prioritization of Licenses to the code. This bill would require that, notwithstanding any other law, any board or bureau within the department shall prioritize African American applicants seeking licenses, especially applicants who are descended from a person enslaved in the U.S. So for board impact, this would require adding a question and or an attestation to the board's examination and license applications in Connect and its paper form. The language of the bill does not specify how the applicant provides eligibility for this prioritization, so this does leave it open to interpretation to the applicant, which could possibly hinder the intent of the bill. The board would also need to amend its regulations that list all of the exam and license application requirements to include the provisions of the bill as an additional form requirement. For fiscal impact, we expect minimal impacts related to the bill. We did use data published by the California Department of Healthcare Access and Information. We don't feel that it's real reliable. We don't really have, good demographic data for our licensed population concerning race. But based on what we do have, there is a low population of applicants that this bill would affect. So the bill affects the initial licensure process, and the workload involved in that is about 1 hour of AGPA time per application. And even if the volume increased by 50%, the workload increase of 1 hour would be absorbable. Due to the low volume projected, staff estimates there will not be a significant change in workload for licensing. The time to add an additional question to the exam and license applications is expected to take 2 hours of an AGPA time. And to amend the exam and license application requirements and regulation, that generally takes about 40 hours of AGPA time for the duration of the rulemaking process. And then there's also the board member review time, which is about maybe 2 hours. So the changes, bottom line, from the bill are absorbable within current budget and staffing resources. So moving on to SB 1066.
Can I ask a quick question on that? So what would be the additional question that we would have to add to the exam? Would it be just a basic demographic question, or would it be, and isn't that already on the exam? Don't we ask
No.
preliminary questions like that? No?
Not about somebody's race or ethnicity. There is, I kind of touched on it with the workforce data for renewals, electronic renewals. We ask that information. But when somebody's applying for the exam, that's not relevant information that we ask for. Now, we do ask for their language preference for the exam, but nothing to do with race or anything like that.
We don't ask for like veteran status or, because what are the?
Oh, yes.
But yeah, just demographics, no. So what would be the other groups that we expedite for? Would it be?
Yeah, I think I get into that a little bit more, I think, in the next bill, or maybe that's further on, but I think there's like 5 different groups that we expedite the licensure process for. And so, yeah, one would be veterans,
Okay.
active duty, military spouses, refugees. And then there's a newer one coming July 1st, which would be active duty members that are in a skill bridge program. So that's what
Got
we
it.
currently have. So this would be, yeah, act very similarly to those, but those laws are pretty specific in identifying that there needs to be documentation to establish eligibility, whereas this bill, and it's early on in the legislative calendar, it doesn't identify that.
Mhm.
It just states that we must expedite the process.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? So SB 1067, Smallwood Cuevas, it says Healing Arts Expedited Licensure Process, Medically Underserved Area or Population. The bill would add Section 871 to the code. The bill would require each healing arts board in the department that licenses health professionals to develop a process to expedite the licensure process, giving priority review status to the application of an applicant for a license who demonstrates that they intend to practice in a medically underserved area or serve a medically underserved population as defined. The bill would authorize an applicant for a license to demonstrate their intent to practice in a medically underserved area or serve a medically underserved population by providing proper documentation, including, but not limited to, a letter from an employer located in a medically underserved area or which serves a medically underserved population, indicating that the applicant has accepted employment and stating the start date. The bill would require adding a question and the required documentation to the board's exam and license applications in Connect and its paper form. The bill specifies documentation for applicants entering an employer-employee structure, but does not specify the documentation to allow for self-employed applicants to demonstrate their eligibility. The majority of our licensees are self-employed, so during implementation of this bill, we would need to identify forms of documentation for self-employment that would demonstrate an applicant's intent to practice in a medically underserved area or on a medically underserved population. So this would require some research on the forms of documentation to demonstrate that. The board would also need to amend its regulations that list all the exam and license application requirements to include the provisions of the bill. And then for fiscal impact, so based on the analysis of the number of licensees who currently have an address of record within a medically underserved area of California, based on medically underserved zip codes provided by California Department of Insurance, 14% of the licensee population of California are located in a medically underserved area, which is approximately 1,652 licensees. So if we take the same proportion and apply it to our applicants, which was 311 in fiscal year 2021 and 2022, we estimate that the board receives approximately 44 license applications from applicants who intend to work in medically underserved areas. So given the new prioritization of these applicants under the bill, we estimate the legislation may bring an unknown increase in applicants from these areas. And then we discuss sort of the same things that we discussed in the last bill about the workload, and just that it is, you know, we're always seeing changes in the volume of applicants year to year, so it's definitely absorbable. And that's really all I have.
Any questions on any of the bills?
Yeah, so I don't have the question on the bills being reported, but my question with early regarding that AB 769, because, you know, interest to the board or not, so, yes.
Sorry, Member Brentegi, point of order, we're not allowed to discuss AB 796 because it wasn't agendized, but we can receive public comment on it. So just saying to be careful with navigating this discussion.
Can she make a comment just generally?
But
I would not make a comment on it since it's not on the agenda. The board members should refrain from discussing it, given that the public was not given proper notice, 10 days notice.
I have to rephrase. How am I going to ask that question now? So how would the board member get educated?
Oh.
You know, some of the bills is being flowing around,
Great question.
and this is the first time I heard it, I have to say. Thank you. So
Excellent.
I'm not even mentioning anything about the bill, but I just want to know how the board members get educated. Sounds like something's already flowing around for a while. Thank
Indeed.
you.
I can answer that question. So this bill escaped our keyword and content search that we use for CalEdge info to track bills. And it was a bill from last year introduced, or there were some bills that were introduced last year that can make it to continue on to a second year. So we don't catch all the bills, we look for keywords. Being that this came up, I've discussed with legal counsel, and what we can do for future agenda items is note that the board can discuss any live bill, but if it's not agendized, then the board can't take a position on that bill. So hopefully our next meeting, if any more bills pop up, would be able at the very least to discuss it. But you know, this came to our attention. Some bills come to our attention from associations, so we do rely on other people, especially the profession, as they might hear things that our board doesn't hear. You know, we do also work with the department. We have a legislative roundtable where all the boards get together and the bureaus, and we discuss items. And then we also have a healing arts section as well as a general board and bureau. So we do discuss these bills then. And this just wasn't, some bills just didn't make our radar.
I see. So thank you. And you know, now you made it more clear, actually, this bill has been flowing around for a while. So I really, this is the first time I heard. So I'm just want to say as board members, you know, and the stakeholders, you know, will reach out to us or bring the attention to us earlier than now. Thank you.
And I would just like to remind everyone that in general, 10 days notice is the requirement to discuss anything for the board. There are a couple exceptions to that, but they're very limited.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members before we open it up for public comment? So why don't we open it up for public comment, both here in the room and then online, and
Let's go ahead and start in the room just to call
start
it
in the
out.
room? Okay. In the room, any public comment or questions? Okay, seeing none here in the room, we'll go to the WebEx.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please, thank you. And so I just want to check in with the board and staff. So it's been about an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know if folks want to break or, okay. Why don't we take what do we usually do, 15 minutes? Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break. And so we'll be back here around 10:37 according to mine. So 10:37 we'll re-adjourn. Thank you. Order, and I think everyone is getting back. Okay, looks like everyone is back. And we're just cleaning stuff up here for a second. Okay, so we can now proceed to item number 6, which is the regulatory report. And I think that's Mrs. Brothers.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. So the first regulatory package is our implementation of uniform standards related to substance abusing licensees and update of the disciplinary guidelines. The board approved revised text to these guidelines at the last board meeting in October. And we're still currently updating the rulemaking documents, the initial statement of reasons. The next package, it relates to SB 1448, disclosure of probation status to patients. That's also looped into the guidelines. And again, we're working on those documents now. The third regulatory package kind of relates to an older bill, SB 1246, and some cleanup. It's a Section 100, so it's a quicker way to get changes in reg. And what we did was we took a portion of the regulatory package and converted it into a Section 100 package, and it was filed initially with OAL on June 30th. We did withdraw the package on August 4th due to some necessary technical cleanup. And we also pulled over some of the regulations and the proposed changes to regular rulemaking. Non-substantive changes without regulatory effect to sections 1399.415, 1399.438, and the title of Article 3.5 were resubmitted to OAL on February 14th. And their decision is actually due March 28th. We did just meet with OAL yesterday, and hopefully those changes will be approved, and they do take effect upon filing. The next reg is align curriculum standards and approval related regulations with statute, and these are the other elements related to SB 1246. We're working on a review of the proposed language with licensing and education staff, along with updates to the draft rulemaking documents. So that will likely come back to the board. I think licensing and education do have some changes, so that'll probably come back to the board for approval. The next reg package relates to, I refer to it as AB 2190. It does have a long title, application process for licensing, examination, and reexamination, and criteria and procedures for approval of a credential evaluation service. This regulatory action was filed with OAL November 22nd, 2023. On January 5th, 2024, we did withdraw the regulatory action to work on some modifications to the text to address some issues that OAL provided. The modified language will be discussed later today at our meeting. and we'll put it out for a 15-day notice. Then the next reg package, application for retired status. The board approved regulatory language in August 2019. After further review from the regulatory unit, when the documents were being drafted, there were some issues with the language that were found requiring some revision. New and updated proposed language is scheduled for discussion again later today. And then we have our continuing education requirements package. The regulatory action was filed with OAL on October 6, 2023, and then there was a 45-day public comment period that ended November 21st. And the board is scheduled to review the public comments that we received at today's meeting. Then we have standards of practice for telehealth services. The board approved revisions to the proposed language at our last board meeting in October. And we are currently working on the rulemaking documents, which should be ready for the regulatory unit's review later this year. And the final package is an older one for on-hand hygiene requirements. This package was initially approved by the board in February 2014, but it was set aside for higher priority regulations. And in October 2018, the board restated its interest in proceeding with regulations. Revisions of the proposed language were sent to the reg unit on November 1st, and we are currently in a collaborative drafting process still on that language. Are there any questions on the reg report?
Members, any questions? Okay, let's go to public comment here in the room first. Any public comment or questions? And seeing none, we can go. Would you like to make a public comment? No, it's okay. If you could just come to the, because there's a recording. Sure, it just as
Well,
long as
this
you're on
is-
the microphone, please. Thank you. This would be, though, only relevant to the regulatory report that was just given.
Thank you. Yeah, well, my name is Dr. Michelle Lau. I'm the president of the Council of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine Associations. KOMA has been 37 years, serving the California profession. Well, I'm concerned is like the regulate all this kind of matter. We, as a stakeholder, and we try to working with more with the acupuncture board. And then I think the board, actually I feel so good about now. So we have been, in the past many years, we be based on a lot of issues and we stood up and fighting. And then we really get very good to at least like educational standard examination, all these things. And we really, you don't know how hard that. I have been the president for KOMA almost 23 years. Of course, that we have been in and out, but I'm still present. Also, I'm a president of American Alliance Acupuncture. That's a nationwide association for acupuncture that we're pushing the Medicare bill for the acupuncture field in the past over 30 years. So that's all relating to California. So if the bill actually is already put acupuncture into the Medicare system, CMS.
I just don't know, and I appreciate all this. I just don't, it might be better, that might be a better comment if you're going to go more into that on items not on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, that's the reason I say I just
yeah,
walk in.
I
I don't
appreciate
know.
that. Yeah. So I think right now we're just taking public comment on the regulatory update. But do you want to come back for items not on the agenda when I open that up for public comment? Maybe
Yeah,
that's better.
sure,
To the extent you're
sure.
going to go down the.
Yeah,
the
one
route of
thing
the
I want
Medicare.
to find out the regular, is there anything relating to dry needle?
Not in this,
Not
not in
this
this
one,
item.
fine.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
thought
so
later
much.
then.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So any other comments on item number 6 from the room? Doesn't look like there are any. So then we'll move to online comments, please.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Okay, that is item number 6. We'll move on to item number 7, app process AB 2190 rulemaking. And is that going to be Ms. Brothers, or is it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this is, again, the package that refers to AB 2190, but it also does a lot of different other things, which I'll get into. So just for a quick history, at the board meeting, August 26, 2021, the board did approve regulatory language to implement AB 2190. And it also did some other items. It creates minimum requirements for board approval of credential evaluation services. It sets forth board requirements, criteria, an application process, and an approval revocation process for credential evaluation service applicants. Provides a section of definitions for terms used throughout the article. Sets requirements for applicants applying and reapplying for CALE based on domestic applicants versus foreign trained. Removes outdated deadlines and policy that related to the exam being administered twice a year versus the current process of being accessible by computer all year long. And it updates the documentation and submission requirements accepted by the board. The proposed regulations were noticed on September 8th, 2023 for a 45-day public comment period, which concluded on October 24th, 2023. The board didn't receive any public comment regarding the regulatory action, and we went ahead and filed it with OAL on November 22nd, 2023. Based on OAL's feedback after their review, the regulatory action was withdrawn on January 5th, 2024 to address some substantive edits of the proposed language through a modified 15-day notice of text. So the modified text addresses a lot of different things that were raised by OAL, and so I'm just going to provide a summary of those things that are in double strike through, double underline, that you will see that it's resolving. So it clearly identifies where documentation, applications, and fees are to be submitted throughout the text. It clarifies the process around the board waiving certain domestic educational and training documentation standards. It updates the process from the board's discretion to waive certification to the current process in which the board shall waive primary source requirement when an applicant has attested they have exercised due diligence as specified. It adds application requirements for examination and licensure to include disclosure of applicant status related to being eligible for the board to expedite the license application process. And there, I think I went over this earlier, the 5 different applicant statuses are listed there. It clarifies the reevaluation process for when an examination application is denied and a reevaluation is requested of the board. It clarifies and updates the process of granting extensions to take the exam at a later date when applicants submit a written statement of their inability to appear for the exam and other specified information to the board prior to the abandonment of their exam application. It removes discretion and a basis of good cause around granting such extensions based on current process. Clarifies and updates the timeliness and process associated with the board, timelines and process associated with the board's evaluation of examination applications in determining deficiencies or completeness and approval of the examination. Specifies a longer timeline for evaluating examination applications for foreign trained applicants. It also incorporates all the requirements for applying for licensure and updates and corrects references throughout, corrects errors, grammatical, and updates terminology throughout for consistency. Following the memo, you will see all of the language. And again, all of the modifications are indicated by double underline and double strike through. And it's a real robust regulatory action on 10 different regulatory sections. Some of them are new, Some of them are just being amended. But what we're requesting of the board today is to review these changes. And there's two different options for motion. Option one would be if there's no edits to the modified language, that you would approve as presented. And then option two would be if there's any amendments or changes to the modified text, you would then state that during the motion. I do want to say that staff has worked closely with OAL with these modified text changes. There was a back and forth between for a pre-review. So we didn't quite get a seal approval. They can't do that, but we got some assertion, a good promise that this is going to go well, that this is good language.
Thank you. Well, why don't we just start then with, do any members, before we present a motion, have any questions or potential edits to the edited text as presented? And I'm not seeing any or hearing any, but as that percolates, if someone does want to present a motion on this, as Mrs. Brother said, there's two options. And the first option is on page 2 of 3 of the report. And if you do move, maybe just so we have real clarity, just read in the motion as presented on, it's actually the top of page 3 of 3. If there's any takers for that.
Let me
Dr.
do it?
Matecki? Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. So move to approve the proposed modified regulatory text and change to 16 CCR Division 13.7, Sections 1399.409, 1399.411, 1399.413, 1399.414, 1399.416, 1399.416.2, 1399.416.3, 1399.416.4, 1399.417, and 1399.419, and direct staff to submit the proposed modified text to the Director of the DCA and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to continue the rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 15-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed.
Well done. And do we have a second? Well, we had, okay. Second from Mr. Osorio. And with the motion on the table in the second, why don't we open this up for public comment and questions here in the room first? And seeing none, we can go to the virtual comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And we'll transition back to a roll call vote, please.
John Harabedian,
Yes.
Young Ping Chen,
Yes.
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim, Shudong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Yes.
Motion passes to approve the modified text for item 7. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 8, CE Law and Ethics Rulemaking.
Okay. So this is in regards to our regulatory action on continuing education, law and ethics requirement. At the board's June 23, 2023 meeting, the board approved regulatory language to implement a new CE requirement for active licensees to complete a minimum of 4 hours in law and ethics as part of the 50-hour requirement as a condition of renewal on active status. This is every 2 years. The proposed regulatory package also adds a definition of 0.5 or 1/2 hour and amends the existing requirement of 22 hours of Category 1 CE coursework to 22.5 hours for licensees restoring their license to active when their license was inactive for less than a year. The board approved regulatory text and delegated authority to the EO to prepare the rulemaking file. The proposed regulations were noticed on October 6th for a 45-day public comment period that concluded on November 21st, 2023. And we do have the rulemaking package available on the board's website. All of our pending regulations are posted there. We did receive 2 comments during the comment period. The board did not receive any requests for a public hearing, and staff is now asking for the board's consideration of the comments and approval of the proposed responses to public comments received. So below we've summarized the comments that we received, and we also have the proposed responses for your review. You may choose to adopt or modify the below proposed responses or suggest alternative responses. The first comment received comment A1. The summary is the commenter suggested that there might not be enough material about law and ethics to learn about every 2 years, opining that every 8 to 10 years, there would still not have much that is new to learn. The commenter suggested that 2 hours of law and ethics would be more reasonable and effective. So for the proposed response of the board, we suggest the board has reviewed and considered the opposing comments and declines to make any amendments to the proposed text based thereon. As described on pages 5 through 10 of the initial statement of reasons posted on our website, the proposed regulatory text establishes that 4 hours of CE in law and ethics is appropriate. In the board's experience, the board's proposal is to set the minimum hours of law and ethics at 4 hours in the 2 years immediately preceding expiration date is sufficient to meet these public protection goals and ensure thorough understanding and notice of the current standards of the law and professional practice. The requirements to take law and ethics on renewal is also consistent with the public policies of other similar healing arts licensing boards. We list Board of Chiropractic Examiners, Physical Therapy Board. In response to the commenter's statement that there won't be enough material about laws and ethics to comply with the proposal, board staff conducted a search on the board's website and the CE Connect portal. Results for current board approved CE related to ethics produced 97 separate courses that amounts to 725.5 hours. Attachment C, you can see the listing of all of the courses that got brought up during that search. In addition, the topics of ethics and laws can pertain to different specialties, concentrations, and subject matter. There are constant changes with best practices and medical industry standards that a licensee should be updated on every 2 years. Based on current coursework available, the relevant material to meet the proposed minimum 4 hours is abundant. Moving on to the second comment, this was received October 11th, 2023, referred to as comment B1. The commenter asked the board when the new requirement for law and ethics is effective and stated that they are about to renew their license and could only find 2 CE programs about law and ethics. The proposed response is that the board has reviewed and considered the comment and declines to make any amendments to the proposed text based thereon. The comment is a question, and the board responded that it will be effective in the future. The nature of the comment has no substantive material and therefore will not impact the regulation text. So again, the action that we request of the board today is reviewing these responses, reviewing the comments, and either accept or reject those comments. And after review, you can consider the two different options for motions. And Stephen's going to go over those motions. There was just a slight correction to one of them.
Hello, good morning, board members. My name is Stephen Vong. I'm the Regulations Counsel for the Acupuncture Board at the Department of Consumer Affairs. So the recommended language is going to be slightly different from what was presented in the materials. You can choose to adopt it. Just say move as read by legal counsel at today's meeting. So for the option, if you decide to agree with the proposed response, it would be to move to direct staff to reject the actions requested in the comments, provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the meeting materials, and use the notice proposed texts and responses for completing the regulatory process. Direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process. Authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations and adopt the proposed regulations as described in the proposed text as noticed. So you can choose to just move with that language. And I just want to emphasize too that you all as board members who have been appointed by the public had already to approve the language as noticed before, you take into consideration the public comment. Thank you. And I'll just stay up here for any questions.
Great, thank you, Stephen. My only question, and it's sort of relevant to both public comments that were, I think, similar in nature, is maybe there is a little bit of confusion between whether the law and ethics 4 hours requirement can actually be satisfied with just a standard ethics CE course. Because there are two, and this list of the CE programs is very helpful. And if you look, there are two specific ethics in the law, right? That amount to, I think, 8 hours in total, which would be twice the amount of hours that we are requiring. So either one of them is 5 hours. So if you took that, that would obviously satisfy the 4 hour, and the other one is 3. So you'd have to take the 3 hour and then something else. Maybe some of the confusion is if you just take a ethics course title that doesn't have anything to do with the law, is that satisfying the 4 hours for law and ethics? I'm seeing different responses.
I don't know if Jay can speak to the actual continuing education courses out there and the process that a licensee would go through.
Is your microphone on? I'm not.
Yes,
you
it's
picking
on.
that up?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I'm not sure of the process that, a licensee goes through when they're selecting the CE. I know that what I used in the Connect was basically the interface that a licensee uses. And so I just searched keyword ethics. I don't know if it's picking it up from the actual course title or from the subject matter, how it's like programmed into the system. I don't know if Jay could speak to that, but I basically did what a licensee would do if you're trying to, figure out what would apply to this. But you're right, some of the titles don't actually say law and ethics. So
Right.
I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, the courses would have, can you hear me? The courses would have to be approved by the board. And if this, once this becomes the case, I'm sure that there'll be 2-hour ethics courses offered. But in the case that you're saying that, she used our search engine for doing it. And that does search both the course content and the course titles, right? And if it was an 8-hour course and they only needed 2 hours, they still would be able to use those other units as part of their CE requirement, right? But they would also meet this sub requirement of ethics.
And I guess that's part of the question that I'm asking. I guess the bigger question though is how are they satisfying the law and ethics requirement for the 4 hours? Can they just take a standard ethics course and that actually satisfies it? Or does it have to be a course that is both law and ethics? Because there are two specific ones that call out law and ethics. But if they just take a basic ethics guide, for example, in billing, well, and this one actually says laws, regulations, and fraud, that would be a really good one because it's clearly law and ethics. But let's just say they took a 3-hour course or a 5-hour course in ethical relationships between acupuncturists. Does that satisfy the 4 hours for law and ethics?
So I don't know, maybe we need to have a legal kind of interpretation. For me, the way I always read it, it was 4 hours of law and ethics. So it doesn't say 2 hours of law and 2 hours of ethics, right? So if you
Right.
took a 4-hour law class, you would meet it. If you took a 4-hour ethics class, you would meet it. That's how I read it. Is that what's intended?
I think
Yeah,
that is
just
what
underlining
I think
your
that is
look,
what
I'm
is
just-
intended. But and I think
That's the way
getting
the
to some of the
discussions have gone.
yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
And I said that's how the discussions have gone throughout the course of this bill, that it would be law and ethics, right, as either or.
No, I don't think it is either or. I think it's both, right? I think it's conjunctive, like it's law and ethics, right? Not either or. I think you have to take a course that is assuming is applicable or addressing law and ethics. And that's, I mean, this back and forth is actually, I think, just highlighting
Right.
for an average licensee, I just think we want to be completely clear with them. How do they satisfy those 4 hours? And I think as a board, we should just have a standard or a set of, okay, if you do these are satisfying your law and ethics requirement. And it's this subset of this longer list that was pulled for us. Because I have a feeling that some of these would qualify and some of these wouldn't, because some of these are just standard ethics, the ethics of evidence-based practice. I mean, that doesn't sound like law and ethics to me. That just sounds like ethics. So I think one thing that we need to do, if we haven't already done it, is if I'm a licensee going in to satisfy this 4-hour course, I just want to know very simply which ones actually satisfy that 4 hours.
Well, I don't think that that's part of this requirement, that we have that in there.
So I think one thing I can point to in the past, like when we, the continuing education broke it out for the requirements, that it be category 1, category 2. I think, again, that's like a process where you have to learn what courses are which, and staff and the board put that out there, which category it falls under. So it probably for something like this is something that we could build out into the system
Right.
to label it law and ethics. Because I think you can see in the listing course category, it'll say category 1, category 2. So we could probably have a different category for law and ethics. So it would be more easily identified that it would satisfy that requirement. So I don't know if it really, the confusion is in the language itself, but how we apply it afterwards and making it user-friendly for the licensee to identify those courses. I think that's highlighted, and the language doesn't, we can apply that any way we want afterwards with the system.
In terms of making it simple for the licensees to identify what is an ethics and law course, we would just develop that in the system.
Got it.
Where it would be, are you looking for a law and ethics course? Click this button and it'll pull up all eligible ones. We would also probably change our application so that we would ask the provider when they're submitting their course application, is this a law and ethics course? And then we scrutinize to that specificity as opposed to just content of acupuncture and medicine. And then we have the staff write off on the analysis of the course, and then it's set into the system as eligible for meeting this requirement. The old system was just a PDF list of all the courses eligible, and we denoted this is a category 1 course, so practice oriented. This is a category 2 course, non-practice oriented. We also denoted whether or not it was a live course or a distance course. In the same way, we'd create these denotations for the ethics course. In terms of if the question is law versus ethics, my recollection of the language, and Christine, please correct me if I'm wrong, is we were creating this bigger category, and perhaps this is an and versus or situation, but we wanted to capture both of those items to address the professional misconduct, unprofessional conduct issues that have been coming up as a discussion with the board members and the stakeholders in the last few years. So this was specifically to address people either dealing with an ethical situation in the practice of acupuncture, or even just the California laws, so that you can be kept abreast of that. And we're not limiting it to just the laws, as some of the comments, as the two comments have indicated. It's this bigger field to address not just laws, but also the practice of medicine, or acupuncture, excuse me.
Mhm.
And
I have follow-ups, but yeah, go ahead, Dr. Mateki.
Oh, go ahead, President.
No, so I guess then, based on that response, if I were a licensee and I just took any 4 hours of an ethics course, do I satisfy my law and ethics 4-hour requirement?
we would denote that in the system. So like, we could make it so that it's automatically identified for the licensee. Like they would have to deliberately, just like with category 1 or category 2 or live versus distance, it's on the licensee to determine, hey, is this the course that meets the requirement I want? And we would try to make it as simple as possible for
Yeah.
the licensee to
And
determine.
I guess I'm more curious whether that and really means and, or it means or.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what I'm getting at. And I thought it meant and. I thought it meant you take 4 hours of a course or courses that we're addressing within the course, both law and ethics, right? That may not be what this is getting at. And on the back end, we can clarify that. But I think to help staff clarify that, I think we need to know what you're trying to clarify, right? Because if it's an or, then it's an or. I think it is an and, which means if I just took a random ethics course in billing, I mean, I don't think that satisfies the law and ethics requirement. It just doesn't seem like that would. And I do think that more of these questions are going to come up. So because we are here as a board, I do think that we need to somehow clarify that to make your job easier when you're coming up with this category of, okay, yeah, these are the 6 or 7 courses that you can take, that you know what actually goes into that bucket, if that makes sense.
Well, and as you said, it is and. Reading it, it's saying and, it's not saying or.
Right.
So to me, in making that consideration, providers are going to have to create courses that are law and ethics. You know, that's going to, it's a new category, right? I don't think we have law and ethics courses existing with that language in the system. I mean,
I think we have 3. I mean, just based on this list, I would say from my non-licensee reading that there's at least 3. You know, there's the basic ethics guide in billing, law, regulations, and fraud. And then there's one that specifically says law and ethics with definition of ethics for acupuncturists. And then there's, and then one called ethics and the law. So, you know, there's 3 based on just title that would seem to fit it. But
well, what if I took 3 hours of ethics and 1 hour of law? Would that work?
yeah, well, and that's exactly my point.
We're not clear on that either. It's 4
Right.
hours of law and ethics. So can I mention 5 minutes of ethics and 2 hours of law, or 3 hour, whatever the remaining time?
Right.
So it's back to that confusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad that you speak first because I want to follow the same kind of question, but I think this is a more like a provider requirement. So which is laid out, if they're going to provide this course, right? So 1, 2, 3, what can they provide will fit for board requirement on this as a law and ethics. So I just want to see, this is maybe like how do we approved certain courses, right? Earlier mentioned how many hours law, how many ethics, maybe this is on the board side, to lay it out more on the provider requirements. Because we have so many CE providers, right? When they offer this course, it's a categorical 1 or 2, you will put it there. This is a fall into 1 or 2. But then they need to follow what's the guideline or requirement to meet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for me as a licensee, right? So I'm going to choose the course. I think it's great. There's so many listed here, but maybe the practice, maybe I do certain practice. I want to learn that specialties, ethics and laws, right? So I'm just thinking this is a more for on the provider side when they're going to offer this course. How do we help them to fit the criteria.
Yeah.
So that's just the part for me. If I'm going to take the ethics course, ethics and the law, or law and ethics. So which one I'm going to choose? I will choose the specialty related to me. But then in that specialty, if they say I'm going to offer this, so the detailed information on the law and ethics need to spell out. Not to try to create more work for you, Christine. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. So since the law and ethics continuing education requirements have been legalized, there's been any changes in terms of violations and other trend? Like,
So it's, the board's only approved the language to start the regulatory package. This isn't law. And so we haven't
yeah,
seen
but
any.
yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, but I remember a lot of new trend is unprofessional conduct, and then also insurance fraud in terms of billing, and on some other specialties like infertility and all other. So there are a lot of challenging issues coming up all the time, and it's changing, every year, I guess. So if we are enforcing this regulatory uh, regulation, then the purpose of that is we want to let them know there's a law that prohibits, or there's some lines that they cannot violate, right? And then also to think of that, you have to be more concerned about the ethics in terms of providing service to the in that situation. So I don't know how we can filter like Mr. Harabian said. How can we filter that there's a ethics aspect and also law out there? They get, they violate and they get prosecuted, right? So that's the whole thing. So I think it's better to clarify to to even to the providers, because I see a lot of the ads coming through my email saying that this is a requirement, so we'll provide you this and that, but I don't know whether they have that kind of idea. And especially maybe it'll be a good thing that if they can have access to those actual citations made by the DCA or the AG for the licensees. So I think the whole point is that, right? So we want to be also practicing ethically, but also we have to let them know in some cases, if you're violating some certain practice guidelines, then you'll get cited, right? So
It sounds like there's more discussion at the, oh, please.
Oh, please, yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for the lawyer president to more detail about this lawmaker and thank you for Dr. Mataki. So I like to know how from MD side, can we take MD's law and ethics? As I know, you have once a year or twice a year, once a year or every other year.
Same, 2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
Yeah, continue medical education.
So how to like
I think this
how to
actually
put,
is.
yeah, both
it's-
inside.
Yeah, it's a good concept. This is where I like Ben, Mr. Bodia has mentioned. I think for this purpose, first, this is for the discussion for adopt, maybe the more detailed rules in the future. But as what you said is certainly, for you want to know what's the continuum, on the medical board side, the laws, the rules, educations. We have a certain, I think it's a lot fall into either the profession, it's a different, I think, than here because we all come out like AMAs, one criteria. And then the hospitals sometimes offer the CMEs, continuing medical education, will add it or target it, specifically. For us right now, there's a lot of education during the COVID time, even now, the long COVID. So I think that's a good question, but this is a more like a tailored to the future, the provider requirements, so I think for currently, we just need to adopt, this policy and give the EOs and staff how to spell it out or worked with the public stakeholders, how to move forward. That's at least I understand. I think that's a good concept, for the provider to explore.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you have information, how medical board choose the provider for laws and ethics. Do they have some standard to choose provider and the courses, the quality of courses?
Yeah, I think there's a lot for medical is easier. As I mentioned, we just go with the AMA recommendations, CMA, California Medical Association, more targeted for California board. So I think maybe the staff, can certainly reach out, but that's the next step, right? That's for the future requirements for the providers when they provide the courses. How are we going to ask them to include it, many of the aspects for this? I think this is very important, for the public to know it also. If the licensees take this kind of course, you already included, covered, especially the new DEI policy, so there's many of the aspects we can work with the stakeholders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Information. And as Member Kim mentioned, I understand if there's anybody doing research, is there anybody doing research on the violations or criminal violations, unethical product practice, and see what is most critical, malbehave or so then more specific, some to correct it, to inform people, to prevent it. Some people get a violation they didn't even know, or really they already violated. So I understand some of your question, right? Yeah, so there be, when we implement the law and the ethics CE, it does not just want they get the education CE credit. We want they really learn something. So how to implement for CAB side, give them some guidance, like first of all, who is qualified to be the provider, and number two, what kind of courses, what basic elements, requirement for the course, like you have to include the law, not just the ethics, have to law and ethic. That's what we say, law and ethic. But how many percentage? 2 hour and the 2 hour, is that viable? So we have to give them some very clear requirement. You have to teach law, not just and the law, changing law regulations. See, we have so many new rulemaking, and I think they need to know, to learn, update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mateki?
Yeah, I thought here we just wanted to see is do we want to adopt the public comments or not, right? So am I correct?
Yeah, it's do we want to accept the way we're responding to the public comments? But I'm hearing questions now from the board on the language we had approved before.
No, so I think we're good on the language. I do think that this is sort of next step, working with the providers, as a couple of the comments have fleshed out from staff and the board members. I think my view is the language is good. I think that we have to, whatever the process is, we always do when working with providers, to come up with courses to actually satisfy the requirements we're seeking to satisfy. Just coming up with a clear curriculum or whatever it is, where they're going to be coming up with courses for the 4-hour law and ethics, to be very clear about what that has to include, how that 4 hours is split up between law, ethics, both, exactly as Jay said. I don't think that's something that we're going to solve as a board today, right? I think we're just establishing the requirement. And I think this conversation is just making it clear that I think staff is going to probably have to lay out very clearly to providers, this is what a CE 4-hour or 2-hour course needs to include to actually, satisfy that 4-hour, that law and ethics requirement, is how I'm kind of interpreting, some of the comments and the discussion, if that makes it easier for staff.
From a workflow standpoint, the way the language is, we could work with that language, and
Right.
the CE coordinator would be approving the courses, and they would be looking for law and ethics without any guidance of percentages. We already do that in our curriculum evaluations, where there's some big topics, but there's no real requirement for individual
Yep.
pieces. So I think we can operate with the language as is, and that as board members have said, that the providers will start teaching towards that requirement. Since it's something everybody's going to need, it'll be a good course, and they're a little stable there. And then depend on our CE coordinator to make that discussion about what that line is. And then we can look to see if we need, further specificity, rulemaking, like 2 hours of this, 2 hours of that, or whatever it would be. But I think we can manage it at the CE coordinator level when they're approving it, and just having the 4 hours and seeing if it is law and ethics. And I think we'll see a bunch of law and ethics courses start to populate our our CE courses offered. So.
And we currently have the CE provider, when applying for a course, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, denoting this is a category 1 course, this is a category 2 course. So we can simply add the additional, and I may have mentioned this earlier, question of, is this a law and ethics course? And then we have them qualify it. Why? What is it that you're doing to explicitly address law and ethics? And then it allows for a deeper dive and ensuring that both law and ethics are presented. In terms of the balance, that's up for discussion, right? You might have some laws, but then you have a deeper set of ethics behind those laws, and not all ethics are laws, but that's the situation that can arise, I believe, should we move this forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. And from a legal standpoint, is there a reason why our motion needs to, and I'm asking Stephen at this point, because he's addressing this specifically, is there a reason why our motion needs to address the public comments? We get public comments on a lot of rulemaking packages and a lot of items that we approve, and I don't remember ever directly commenting in a motion that we are not accepting the public comment. So I just want to make sure, is there a reason why we're doing that here?
Yes, it's
Okay.
required under the government code that we have the regulation submitted for a 45-day public comment period and opportunity to request a hearing. And when we have a written comment, the board has to look at each written comment and see whether we accommodate the written comment or have a reason for not accepting the written comment. So that's why you have the proposed materials. And just want to remind you again that the requirement today is just looking at the text that we have, which is to add the 4 hours of CNE law and ethics.
Got it. No, that's helpful. Okay, well, we did have an oral reading of the updated motion from council. And as council stated, someone who makes the motion can just, and I think that's still okay, just to say the motion as read. So if someone wants, if we are in agreement there, someone can make that motion.
I'd like to make the motion,
Your microphone.
just as Steve read.
I second.
Okay, and that's okay? Okay, so we'll open, before we do a roll call, we'll open it up for public comment here in the room for any questions. And we do have one.
Jacques Marco, Academic Dean, Empress College. So I just wanted to emphasize that we do have in the Chinese medical classics ethics sections in the classical text, in the Suan chapter 39, chapter 11, and of course the medical ethics, Sun Si Miao, the ethics code in Chinese medicine is very, very strong and clear. So those are interesting aspects to incorporate in an ethics class, that we do have a tradition and we should abide by it from the ethics standpoint. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other comments in the room, we'll go to the virtual comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And it looks like we have a request for comment from Neil Miller. And Neil, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the Unmute Me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I applaud you for finally getting this done. It will help to hopefully reduce some of the violations that we've had. Personally, I represent CalAtma, but I do believe that the language that is submitted is fine, and I hope that you approve it. But there is still a gray area that exists between certain things that are in the law and what is in ethics. There may be something that is in the law or not in the law that would not be ethical. In other words, you could use ultrasound and that's legal. It's in our scope of practice. But if you have no training in ultrasound, then that would be an unethical act by the practitioner. And then there's a number of other examples. So I hope that today you approve of the language here, but I would recommend some sort of subcommittee with the stakeholders to really flesh out some of the problems that you've had, and to really look at both law and ethics and how they combine, so that we can keep the public safer, and that the practitioner has a better understanding of the law and the ethics, and that the providers will have a better understanding of what should be included. So I think that some sort of subcommittee with some kind of legal counsel there to know what it is we can and can't do, to not violate, as Francisco said, unprofessional conduct. That continues to come up. We don't want to violate that, and we want to work with the board. So again,
30 seconds.
applaud you for putting this together, and I hope that you approve it. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you for the comments. We will go to a roll call vote.
John Harabadian,
Yes.
Yang Ping Chen,
Yes.
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim, Shu Dong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Yes.
The motion is to go with option 1 as read by Regulatory Counsel Stephen Vong. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Move on to item number 9, retired status.
Last regulatory package of the day.
Thanks for bearing with me. Again, this is a package that we've seen in the past on our retired status. It relates to Business and Professions Code Section 464, which is the section that authorizes any board within DCA to establish by regulation a system for a retired category. And staff last brought this proposed regulatory language for discussion in 2019 at a board meeting, where the board did vote to approve the proposed regulatory text and direct staff to initiate the rulemaking process. During the initiation of those rulemaking documents, staff worked with Regulatory Counsel to review what was just approved for the retirement language. It was during that time that a number of areas were identified that would require some substantive edits. So staff was referred to a few boards, namely Dental Hygiene, Architects Board, and Physical Therapy Board, who recently received approval of their proposed retirement regulation from OAL. Staff conducted a thorough review of the options and discussed the pros and cons of each approach, and determined that a redirect in language was necessary. And so we're bringing that new language for the board's discussion and review today. So we mainly used the physical therapy board, their language, and then there was also some board-specific changes that we made. So the language does provide that it now clarifies what disciplinary reasons refers to in applying the statutory requirement that a retired license shall be issued to a person who was not placed on inactive status for disciplinary reasons. This would include disciplinary orders resulting from accusations and interim suspension orders. And this language relates directly back to the statute 464. It sets forth the requirements for an applicant to be eligible for a retired license to include submission of an application for retired license with specified information instead of incorporation of a prescribed form, payment of a retired license application fee, and having an active or inactive license issued by the board. Not placed on inactive status by the board due to disciplinary reasons, and not to be engaged in the practice of acupuncture or an activity that requires the person to be licensed by the board. It sets forth the requirements for a holder of a retired license to include not engaging in any activity which requires an active license, and to use their professional title with the word retired before or after the professional designation. Sets forth the requirements to restore a retired license to active status within 3 years of the issuance of a retired license. These requirements are comparable to an expired license under Business and Professions Code Section 4966, which also provides 3 years from expiry to restore or renew before the license is considered lapsed and permanently canceled. So the requirements for restoration would include submission of an application to restore a retired license with specified information instead of incorporating a prescribed form. We're moving away from that. We want to just identify the elements of a form directly in reg if we can. Payment of the biennial renewal fee, completion of at minimum the 50 hours of CE within the last 2 years prior to applying to restore the license to active status, and submission of fingerprints if an electronic record does not exist in the Department of Justice Criminal Offender Identification Database. Due to a retired license being comparable to an expired license, 3 years is provided to restore to active status. At that point, if a licensee who has been in retired status for more than 3 years wants to have an active status, they will be required to apply for a new license, just as a canceled license does under BPC section 4967. And 4967 identifies the steps required to obtain a new license. It also, the proposed language also sets a retired license application fee at $85, which is supported by the workload analysis. And if you, that is the third document after the proposed language. You can see here that we've identified the tasks that would be involved to process a retired application, the staff level that would be doing the tasks, and how long that would take, and that would amount to $85. So we're just assessing a fee that meets the actual workload cost. So we're recommending that the board adopt the new proposed retirement language, the revised language. And so we do have the two options there. Option 1 would be if you approve, and then option 2, if you approve as amended. And are there any questions on the proposed language for retired status?
Not from me. Any members have questions? No, seems very straightforward. Thank you for that.
If a board member wants me to make a motion, I can read the motion if there's any reluctance to read it out loud, since they're so long, but please, anybody have a motion?
Yeah, I have a motion to approve the as read.
I'll go ahead and read it then.
Sure.
Okay. This is option one to approve everything. Okay. I move that the board, or Ruben Osorio moves that the board rescind prior proposed text approved August 16th, 2019, and approve the newly proposed regulatory language and changes to Division 13.7, Article 2, Section 1399.419.3, and Article 6, Section 1399.460, as provided in the materials, and direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process and make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt new section 1399.419.3 of Article 2 and amend section 1399.460 of Article 6 of Division 13.7 of Title 16 of CCR as noticed.
Member, sorry, would you mind just renewing your motion?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to just renew it to say as read since you just read it?
Yes, yeah, I move a motion to approve the
As read.
as read.
Perfect. Member Kim has seconded.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will open it up for public comment here in the room first. And seeing none, we'll go to virtual comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please, thank you. And we will come back for a roll call vote.
John Harabedian,
Yes.
Young Ping Chen,
Yes.
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim, Shudong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And so we're moving right along here, and I know we have two more items, and they're pretty straightforward, so maybe we just keep pressing forward. Item number 10, strategic plan. Mr. Bodea, is this you?
That's right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. So before you is the draft strategic plan that we worked on at the October meeting, on the second day of the meeting. We have all the work that board members agreed to, and there are a couple of clarifying sections that I would like to bring to the board, but I will start out with any questions or comments from the board first.
Seeing none, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much. If members will turn to page 9 of the strategic plan, goal 3 area, legislation and regulation, I am recommending removal of goal area 3.2, which reads align regulations with Business and Profession Code 730.5 to clarify scope and protect consumers from unlicensed activity. Staff is recommending removal of this as we met with legal counsel and reviewed this statute specifically, and it is clear medical doctors cannot direct assistance to needle and so forth. So that is in Business and Professions and doesn't need to be cleared up in our regulation. At the same time, to replace that one, should the board so wish to do, I'm recommending approval of goal area 3.7, the last item on that page, which is seek statutory authority to allow domestically trained applicants to complete missing education requirements at board-approved educational and training programs. And this is to allow parity between foreign applicants and domestic applicants, whereas foreign applicants can make up any missing credit from their transcripts in their foreign education here in the States at an ACOM-approved program and a board-approved curriculum. In the same way, we want domestic applicants to have that option as well. And shall I take it piecemeal or?
Keep going. Yeah.
Keep going, okay. The last recommendation is to remove, if you go to page 10, goal area 4, outreach and communication, recommending removal of goal 4.3 and 4.5. We feel that staff, upon reflection of this, feels that it can all be and has been rolled into goal area 4.1, which is really to have greater outreach and provide stakeholders the opportunity to provide the board questions on the processes, a more direct back and forth. We find that during board meetings, a lot of public members want to ask questions and engage in conversation, but as we noted here, if it's not agendized, the board can't comment on it. So this would allow a forum for that to happen, and we feel that that would be captured in 4.1 completely. And those are the only recommendations that staff has for the board.
Thank you for that, Ben. Any questions on those minor changes? Okay. Do you need a motion to approve the strategic plan as presented?
Indeed, we will need a motion to approve the strategic plan, and you can, as noted, say as read by the executive officer.
Anyone want to make that motion?
Strategic plan? As read by the Member Kim has, sorry, I'm just going to repeat it since the mic was off. Member Kim has motioned that the board approve the strategic plan as amended, or yeah, as amended by the executive officer.
We have discussed first, board member.
Do board members have comments?
Do you
Of course.
have any comments?
Yeah. So a question about the seek legislative clarity and authority over Asian massage and the manual therapy to alleviate consumer confusion.
We're looking at goal 3, page 9, 3.3.
So my question is there any more detailed information? Is there any more detailed information about that? As I know, Asian massage already removed from the sunset bill from the acupuncture supervising the acupuncture assistant. So anything else we can do with this? Like the idea is more leaning to the manual therapy, the language, not instead of Asian massage. Try to understand better.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we had gone over this point during the strategic planning process, you know, when we came up with this language, I think that is, your question is exactly why we put this in here, which is, you know, we want to hopefully promote some sort of process to change the regulations through legislation to make sure that the Asian massage versus manual therapy confusion is just eliminated once and for all. So I do think that as a strategic plan, it's pretty broad. And I think that over the next 5 years, however long it takes, I think that that is where staff is going to kind of where the rubber hits the road. But it was my understanding of when we put that in there.
Thank you, President. So anybody else have questions? I have one question, just want to know the goal 1, consult with DCA's OPS to gather information on the differences between the national certification exam and the California licensing exam. So what does that really mean?
Go ahead. Yeah.
This was brought up just because the board audited the national certification exams for modules back in 2015, 2016, and there was a push at that time for the board to consider going to the national certification as part of the licensing examination process. Since then, the board has gone to computer-based testing, and the exam continues to be less expensive than all 4 modules of the national certification examinations. And The board still has to, would the board go forward with this, still has to audit the exam at the national, or yes, the national certification exams to ensure, to understand what the differences are. Should the board go that route, there would be other processes. The board would have to develop its own specific exam for what isn't tested there. But this came up during the bill by Quirk Silva a couple years ago, where they were mandating, the bill was to mandate the board to move to the national examination, and we replied that we can't because we don't have an understanding of their examination process. So it was also used at the time as a feature of creating more national portability. However, there really isn't portability in that process, seeing as how you still have to complete California curriculum requirements, where most out-of-state programs have 1,900 hours, and so they still need to complete at minimum 1,100 hours for qualifying for California. Ultimately, the item 3.7 that I introduced would allow for that portability. And so this was simply to carry over old actions from the board. And if the board seeks to remove it, it certainly can.
May I? Yeah, I just want to follow that. I remember we had a long discussion, 2 years ago, either March 2021, the board 6-0 unanimously voted, so I know currently board still have a lot of action item needed to work on. Do we really need to spend the effort, on this? Should we just drop it?
I would call it the question of the board members right now. Would you like to include the removal of this item?
Of the item that we just discussed?
Yes.
No, I think we included it for a reason, right? I mean, and I think we had a long discussion. Just to be clear for the public and everyone listening, we are merely approving a strategic plan that we had spent a full day coming up with along the full board staff. And, while the work of that isn't necessarily reflected in the strategic plan, I mean, we spent hours talking about each of these points. So I think, at this point, relitigating any of the points or kind of rehashing it, I think would be difficult. But in my view, I think it's an important thing to keep in there. But I'm just one member, so.
So the consult with OPS is.
Where are you exactly?
Just here, the same one.
Page 7, item 1.
To understand what job CAB need to do to consult with DCA to get information. So is DCA doing the job or CAB?
This would be CAB engaging with the Office of Professional Examination Services to do an analysis of the other exams. So we would be effectively hiring OPES to conduct the audit of those examinations.
So the cost would be on CAB?
The cost would be on CAB for that.
And for our last, our last comparison study, it was around $75,000 or something like that to complete that study.
So 2016, $75,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was 2016, but now inflation was doubled. Well, imagine how many licensees renewal fee will be counted. And we don't have, our licensees number is decreasing. But sometimes we just have some language there, but when we talk about more detail, then kind of with the surprising. When I just know the number, I didn't know. So I was not here 2016, that sunset review, 2018 sunset review. So I read some language from the DCAs or from Assembly Joint Committee. The language said the California lawmaker legislation will not have the, or difficult, or does not see, has authority to oversee the other examination other than CALE. So CALE is designed under the under the California acupuncture law, but other examination is any of one or two, three, I don't know. So it's not under California's law. So how can that other examination responsible to California acupuncture law and to protect the consumer? That is my question. And plus the cost. We don't know how much it will cost now. So that's my question. So sometimes I did not know too much of that, but when this come up, and I just ask more questions and try to learn more, and I got this new thought. So I don't know, other board member.
Just in brief answer with that, we've determined before that for those gaps, we need a California specific exam. We would need a California supplemental exam along with the NCCOM exam. That's what the result was before. To address those gaps, you're talking about California specific laws, California laws and regulations like that. There still would be a from our prior study, there was a necessity to have a supplemental exam to meet just what you're talking about.
So how would that supplement law regulation exam will cost? Do you have any idea, Jay?
Well, we're not there, so I can't do it, but it would cost something.
I mean, I mean, this is a few months ago, but I feel like this item was brought to our attention by Dr. Mateki more specifically. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought that this was an important goal in order to assess California as the leader in the industry with our licensees, and just how strenuous and rigorous it is to pass our exam versus the national exam. And I thought that this strategic goal kind of went to assessing just how California does stack up to that national exam. And so that is my memory. And am I remembering that correctly? And if so, maybe you can just kind of refresh our recollection as to why this was such an important item to include on the strategic plan.
I think that time, thank you, President. I just want to reiterate, it did, I believe we did discuss back then, but that was the time, is like, is it mandatory, need to, analyze the exam? So that's what, from my understanding, is that every 5 years, we supposed to do some kind of audit process, right? But at this point, I don't know, the board want to bury the burden, with the analysis, cost. So I'm kind of like either way, but it's absolutely what you said at that time. I think it is important, California, the standard for the education and also the rigorous of the exam. At that time, I believe we changed to the computer-based, so there's a lot of values, to prove, to maintain the kill. So from this item here, from today, the discussion is, I just, that was the time we wanted to maintain, but I just didn't know is that absolutely you needed to do those audit every 5 years. That was based on the information I had before. I thought is important, but maybe Mr. Bodia, you can let us know. Not necessary to do the audit every 5 years, then we don't have to put this as a primary goal.
Yeah, the board definitely is not required to do an audit of the NCCOM. I believe the legislature's spirit at the time was to seek some kind of national standard, and their approach was to use this exam, which the board had discussed was the board's exam was sufficient in their discussions, and it would have been more expensive to move to the national, especially with the idea that the supplemental would be required on top of that. So there's additional costs. And as noted, the licensees would be footing the $75,000+ bill for that audit as well. This isn't something that's happening now from the licensees. They aren't pushing it, although CSOMA was the sponsor of Rick Silva's bill. So there was some licensee influence, but outside of that, we didn't see too much support elsewhere. So this isn't something required of the board.
Thank you for the clarification. So back to the president. So I can withdraw my request from before, but now it's listed here, what kind of the procedure we need to decide, maybe we don't need to put in this as a plan, as one of the goals.
I mean, yeah, whatever the board wants to do here. I mean, I don't have a problem leaving it in. Now, how this plays out, the cost, that is going to be something that the board and the staff are going to have to work through. It doesn't sound like a terrible idea to know how our exam stacks up to the national exam, considering that there have been kind of questions on that before and continual questions about moving us to a national exam. I think the board should probably know, what does that look like for the consumer, for the licensees. So, I mean, this doesn't sound like a waste of time to me, but, and again, on a cost level, I don't know what that's going to be, but that is something that the board, future boards can figure out with staff. I mean, I don't think a strategic plan necessarily, requires certain things to be done, right? I mean, this is essentially just consulting with the Office of Professional Examination to potentially gather information on the differences of the exam. I don't think we need a full-blown audit necessarily, right? I mean, I could see this going in 5 different ways. So this doesn't concern me. I do remember having a pretty full-throated conversation about this and it being pretty important at the time. Now, I'm happy if the majority of the board doesn't want to do that. We don't have to do it. I guess I'm not hearing any good reasons not to do it other than it might cost some money. I mean, I just don't. Sorry, is your microphone on, Francisco?
Oh, okay, sorry. And also it says we're gonna host or promote the stakeholders meeting. So at that time, we can get some more input because as we know, those educational and training standards, that's what we've been talking about. And then we need to get more input. And then one of the reasons is we need to comply or accommodate the changing markets standard and demand. So that's what all this is all about. So I think we can discuss this in the stakeholders meeting. I mean, board member, we only meet on the board meeting. Members only meet at the board meeting. So we can decide that and get more information and input from the stakeholders meeting, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of things in regards to the education and training for this profession in the next 4 years. So that's why I think we need to do that first, yeah.
And just to reiterate President Harabedian's comment, like, we're not required to do everything. Obviously, it's 5 years worth of goals and we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we can work with, like, if do we need to do the audit or do we just need to consult? Like, the language is general, right? We do want to keep abreast of what the national certification requirements are, but is the reason for that the same as it was before? It's not going to hurt the board to be able to respond to future legislative bills that, hey, we've looked into this and there's high costs for this, if that's what we determine, or there's a content area. It's been looked at by trusted third parties as well.
Austere, I'd like to remind the board too that even if it's not in the strategic plan, the board still has the authority to put this on a future agenda, look into other ways. This is just simply looking at goals.
So we have not have the NCCOM's request request us to do the comparison. Do we have?
They have not asked to audit our exam.
We volunteered to do comparison. Is that right?
It was before my time as the executive officer, so I'm not quite sure what was the motivation at the time, but it had to be carried out in 2015. That's what I recall.
Thank you, because I did not know that history, so
Right.
I like to get educated.
And we can look into that. But again,
So for me, I really wonder why we want to do this. Is kill fail? And for our discussion and from stakeholder, personally didn't hear anybody tell me, oh, kill fail. We need the other exam, introduce other exam. So I don't know. So before the board heard any complaint, like the KO has the weak points, too many weak points, so we need the other exam to replace it. I don't know if that's the case. And if not, why? What's the reason we want to have other exam to? And it's ourselves we pay the money to do the comparison to prove we have a deficit. We are weaker. Maybe we are weaker. Is that logical? I just don't understand. But for me, KO exam is under the California acupuncture law that I think that give consumer confidence, and also under the regulators monitor and oversee. So it's lawful, it's legal, and it's sound. It's convenient, it's improving from menu to computer. So I'm proud of this acupuncture board, the former board president and President Dr. Mataki, President Helby, and Ben as you, and Mr. Hudert, Miss Brother, you're here forever. Learn so much from you. I think Q is fine right now, but I like to learn more. So that's my issue.
So is your idea to remove this, or is your idea to, because I think if we want to learn more, maybe keeping this in actually would help us learn more, but I'm not sure. Do you want to remove it?
I like to know your, I heard from President Javier, so California always lead the nation, just like the attorneys profession, accountant profession lead the nation actually. So your idea is leave it here, and if we get information from DCA and show KO is stronger than any other, and maybe promote to the national, something like that. I heard something like.
I mean, yeah, and I think this is, I guess, part of the danger of sort of rehashing each point today versus in the room at the time, because I think all of our memories might be, imperfect. But I guess the short answer is I don't know exactly why we included this here. I have my ideas and I remember some of the conversation, but I do remember having a pretty well thought out reason as to why we had it in there. And I do remember having it to do with California's sort of stature within the national practice and the differences that we may have here in California versus other states and the national exam generally. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing to know where we stand versus our exam versus the national exam, just to know what is being asked on the national exam, certification exam versus our licensing exam. I think it's probably good knowledge to know that for the consumer, for the licensee, et cetera. And again, I think I don't really know what that looks like. It might just be staff doing a pretty informal review. It could do a lot of different things, but I guess I'm not that concerned about leaving this in here because this is something that I would think we'd want to do anyway. I mean, I would think of our licensing exam is different, the same as the national certification exam. As a board, I'd want to know that. I think the consumer would want to know that. So I guess I don't have a lot of problems keeping it in. And I do think that there is some danger of out of five goals with 5 or 6 sub items with each goal, we could spend a long time sort of going over each one again and saying, well, why is that in there? I think it's going to be, you can sort of start unraveling the tapestry one string at a time. And so that's my only fear is that, to the extent we go down this road of removing items now based on substantive kind of policy reasons, we can do that. I just think that we should be very clear as to why we're doing that. So if you do want to remove it, which we absolutely can, given the process that we went through with the strategic plan, the very good conversation we had with stakeholders in the room and the full board, I just want to make sure that we're very confident as to why we'd want to remove it. Because I think, there were things that didn't, throughout the process of the strategic plan, there were things that weren't included here because at the time of the strategic planning process, we removed them, through conversations like this. But, if there are really good reasons, and if board members do want to remove it, I mean, we can decide to do that. I'm not hearing great reasons why we would remove it, but I do want to hear it. I mean, if this is an item that we just don't want to include, then we can make that decision.
So I have one more question. Say, is ACCOM come to the board to present or provide their advantages? Then KO, have they ever done it? We are doing the comparison. Are they doing comparison themselves? Is a history, I don't know.
So no, like none of that is happening. This was California driven through the legislature is how it initiated. And the audit was done to assess that request of the legislature at the time.
So what's the
I believe.
anticipation, like from this comparison? We anticipate, we do some research, we always, like scientific research, we always say the possible outcome. What do we expect the outcome? Like which is better?
I think we can discuss that and in other, like maybe stakeholders meeting with the other licensees and public, because we all passed, agreed on to put this this agenda in the strategy plan. So I think it's not a good time to discuss in detail, but as long as we can pass it and then discuss more in detail in the other stakeholders meeting.
And the board can take it up agendize it, as our legal counsel said, for a future discussion and just establish, hey, look, we're okay with it right now. We don't need to do any further. But as President Harbidian said, it doesn't hurt to know what the national standards are and, or not the national standards, but the national certification exam is like compared to the KL. Does the board have to foot the bill? No, just because we put it here, it doesn't mean that the board would have to do this. And if the legislature tells the board to do something, then the board will have to do that, but we'll have to ask the legislature or work through the budget augmentation process to request the additional funding to move something like this through if it was requiring an audit. But to have a discussion on it, it's definitely possible. And to check in with our stakeholders on it, since it was such a big issue in 2015 and 2016, isn't going to hurt either to show our stakeholders, hey, Kale is still sufficient, not only sufficient, but an excellent testing tool.
What do you think?
Well, I'm looking at different ways that
It was on.
President Harbidian, we had discussed all this in detail, a lot of time. Is there a way that we can put it on the side and discuss it again, or what does everybody want?
I think we want to approve the strategic plan in some form today so that we can get it memorialized. I think, you know, and I'm not sure if there's other points that other members have that they may or may not want to include. I would just be very careful that we are going to go through specific sub-items beneath the 5 different goals and sort of try to pull some out right now and have really broad, in-depth conversations about why they're in there and why they're not. Because I do think that that's sort of why you have this strategic planning session. Today was really, I mean, it's like a ministerial, just approving the document that we all agreed on that day to be our strategic plan. And so in many ways, I think going down this route, notwithstanding the merits of this one point that we've been discussing now, I think that's dangerous. And I think it's dangerous because we are all operating on a different level than we were in that room. In that room, we were crafting a strategic plan for 9 or 10 hours and talking about each of these issues in depth. And I think it's easy to come back now and say, okay, well, let's rehash why each one of those is in there. I just think that could, then why have the strategic planning session, right? Today was more, we're making last minute adjustments, you know, maybe adding or subtracting certain things based on staff's input, but it's essentially a package to me. That's how I view it. Now I'm just one person. So again, if we want to limit kind of maybe excluding this one point, I'm happy to do that. But I think if we do want to include or exclude additional points, I just think we have to be very careful that we're not just essentially having another strategic planning session.
Would that work for everybody?
Well, I think if we're just, maybe we can just be very surgical right now. I think if this point wants to be excluded, I have no problem if we want to exclude it. I don't though want to go on and then start, I think, talking about each point, whether we keep it in there or not. So why don't we just take this first point? Does anyone else want to remove? I think the vice president would rather not have this point in there, correct?
I am
Yeah.
learning a lot from today too. Really the cost or something.
Yeah. So would you rather not have it in? And that's fine. You could,
So I want to listen everybody's. So
well, I'm not going to open up for public comment just on this one thing, but if other members have points to make on this one point, please share them now.
You have
here.
Okay.
on the item that she wants to discuss later or hold it for a different.
I know we go through this a long time, but if it's really we not sure we can do it, we can probably just leave this one out for right now. Is my suggestions. If it's okay, then we we can go along next.
Yeah, would that work?
Do we take a vote? Well,
No,
you
I'm
know,
just, we can,
yeah.
we'll take some amendments, but okay, so fine, taking it out, taking it out, taking it out, taking it out. Francisco, do you have a problem taking it out? I know. So this is going to be an amendment to your motion. But I do want to just on this point, I think we can agree that we take it out. That's fine. Are there any other comments or questions about any of the other points before we have the friendly amendment to, I think it would be a friendly amendment to his motion?
I would
Retract.
Yeah, we could just
Just
retract.
retract it?
Well,
Okay.
would you like to retract your motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we can take out that one point on the exam. That's fine. Are there any other points or comments on any other goals or any of the points under the goals?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Would you like me to read
Sure.
what the motion would
Oh,
be?
pardon a second. Member Kim, could you just formally state that you withdraw the motion?
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion.
Thank you. A possible motion, and if you agree with this, you can say as read by the executive officer, is to adopt the strategic plan, removing goal 1.2, removing goal 3.2, adding goal 3.7, and removing goals 4.3 and 4.5 as identified in the materials. Would any member like to do that? Mr. Kim? Member Kim?
I'll make the motion, which I can read, as read.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay. So now I'm going to open it up for public comment here in the room. And we do have a public comment.
Thank you. I was very impressed to listen to all your discussion. As a stakeholder, I involved with NCCO examination almost 30 years. So we have been in California. Acupuncture Board is representing California. So what we're looking at, and I hope the Acupuncture Board member, you have to remember, we are working for the consumer for California. Educational issue, and I remember 2001, 2002, we fought very, very strongly and for education. And after 24 years now, 23 years, and finally California profession reached our goal, I would say. The time we want to move the California acupuncture education to much higher level, 4,000 hours, and then also get entry-level doctor. Because we are treating patient, we are not just stick the needle for certain things. It's for the whole body. So many illness that acupuncture can help. And as the Acupuncture Board, we in our rule, we including acupuncture, massage, acupressure we call, and herbal medicine. And we are far higher than any state, the hours education that I hope the member, you all understand. You're coming every few years and changing to something, and you don't know the history. I know the history. Since 1991, I was the Acupuncture Board I would say the consultant expert. Also, I'm the examiner and then chief examiner for many years. And I know that how good, better the California examination than national. I got my national license in 1987. So easy, okay? I tell you something why I really am proud today. You make the decision. We don't want to waste California acupuncturists and the consumers' money. And you know the fight between that, I have been go through 3 governor office. And then finally we work on the BMP, Senate BMP, Assembly BMP. Each time when this old issue come out and costs so much money from our acupuncture, our resort, 2000, I remember 2001 or something, that acupuncture Board under attack, okay? And because it's supporting to bring up the education, and the outsider, they are against it. And then we have to raise $250,000 to do like sort of what you call it now, you said spend like a 75,000 for just do this again and again and again. Why we already have a conclusion. California now, we already have an entry-level doctor program. But in a lot of states, they just under like a maybe even not master.
30 seconds.
Yes. Anyway, putting the point is we have to make California the best. Acupuncture examination is the proof. And also that is the foundation. Without a good examination, no national standard. You have to understand no national standard. Every state is different. They just a certificate. We are licensing. So that's why hopefully we can have a staff, we have a further the stakeholder. We can get in more with working with Acupuncture Board. Then we can discuss even further. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions here in the room? And seeing none, we'll go to the virtual comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and I have a couple requests for comments. I'm going to go in the order they were received. First, I have Tiffany Tufty. And Tiffany, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Yes, hi, this is Tiffany Tufty from CSOMA. I just wanted to make a public comment about the NCCAOM exam and taking it off of the strategic planning for the California Acupuncture Board. I would really advise not to do that. I need to look back at the notes to see if that has been taken off, but this is an issue that comes up all the time for associations. There's a lot of misinformation about NCCAOM versus CALI and which exam is better or worse. I think it's a bigger conversation of national standardization for the acupuncture profession and what that means for us moving forward to work in hospitals, the VA, and Medicare. So I strongly urge you not to take that off the agenda for the strategic plan, as that is important to our members. It is something we are continually working on as an association, and it wouldn't change how we run things in California. And so I just advise people to potentially leave that on as the strategic plan discussion. It is important to our members and likely going to be coming up again in the near future as a discussion point. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, Neil Miller. And Neil, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Neil Miller from CalAtma. I'd like to compliment the staff, the board, and the leadership of Mr. Harabedian in doing the strategic plan. I thought it was very helpful to have members of the public there. I have been a part of every strategic plan since the 1980s. This was probably the best one yet. It took in a lot of things that have gone on before. With this strategic plan, I don't know why we're still discussing this and making changes now at the last minute. I agree with the previous commenter about not taking out things that we put in there that we discussed all day long, and there's a reason why we put it all in there. I have my notes from that day, so I would recommend that you do keep it in there. We can discuss this at another time, but the strategic plan was a very good day, and the product that I see in front of me clearly reflects the amount of work that all of you put into it. With each strategic plan, we try to improve and a few years go by and then we didn't do something. So with this strategic plan, as a stakeholder, we will hold you accountable to the strategic plan as a partnership so that we can work on the things that we brought that need to be brought to the forefront so that we do a better job at protecting the public and allowing the practitioners to do what it is
30 seconds.
What it is that we do. My only comment in regards to the national exam, not to discuss whether the exam or not is equal, but I think that the continuing education is equal, and I will bring that up at another time for public comment to hopefully be on an agenda at another time. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for those comments. We do have a motion on the table. So we can call a vote, please.
John Harabedian,
Yes.
Yongping Chen,
Yes.
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim,
Yes.
Shudong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Exactly.
Yes.
Motion is to adopt the strategic plan as amended.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, let's move on quickly through item number 11.
Thank you, members. This is the administrative manual. It's recommended that the board review its administrative manual every few years, and I think it's nicely timed with the strategic plan as well. The changes you see before you are have been identified by myself and our legal counsel, Brennan Mayer, and it's simply what changes we are recommending are in red in the text, or perhaps some of you received it in blue text. But what you'll see is a strike through for removing and underline for adding. And the changes are simply to provide the proper government codes or laws and regulations of where they're sourced and to spell out certain acronyms. There's no substantive content change. Any questions from the board members?
I don't have. It's very straightforward. Thank you.
I don't.
Oh.
Board members are always welcome to add if they would like or have questions about it. Otherwise, the recommended motion would be to adopt the changes provided in the board administrative manual as presented by staff.
Can I get a motion as stated?
I motion as stated.
We have a motion from Ruben Osorio as stated by the executive officer. Do we have a second?
And second?
A second by member Mateki. Thank you.
We can open it up for public comment here in the room. And seeing none, we could open it up for virtual comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and I apologize. We do have a request for public comment from Neil Miller. Neil, once again, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears in your device.
Neil Miller, again, I think that this is a very good document, and I think Ben and his staff did a great job putting it together. I read through it twice. I'd just like to make one comment about agenda items. The public makes agenda items or makes recommendations for agenda items. I've been reviewing the minutes for the last 4 years, and the majority of the agenda items that the public has brought forth are not on the agenda. So I think that this is an area where the board and the staff and the chairperson need to come together a little bit better to address a number of the issues so that they don't carry over. So this is where the strategic plan and the administrative manual do come together so that we can have a level of accountability of what you want to accomplish and how we can participate and make it a better relationship for all of us. So that's my comment. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And thank you for the comment. Roll call vote, please.
John Harabedian,
Yes.
Yang Ping Chen,
Yes.
Ruben Osorio,
Yes.
Francisco Kim,
Yes.
Shudong Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Yes.
The motion passes to adopt the changes in the admin manual.
Thank you very much. So we've reached the end of the agenda with a couple more items. Number 12 is public comments for items not on the agenda. And how we usually do this is just open it up for public comment, and we can do it here in the room and do it virtually. But there's always questions as to whether members during this time can make comments or questions about items not on the agenda. So why don't we go to public comment first? here in the room and or virtually for items not on the agenda, and then we can bring it back for maybe a quick, if any of the members have anything to say.
Hello, my name is Yoon Kim, president of Empress College in Culver City now, California. Thank you to the board and the staff for the wonderful work that you're doing. Today, I was very concerned to learn about athletic trainers doing acupuncture. Dry needling is acupuncture in the state of California. This does not promote public safety, and since the board's really the mission is to protect the public, I really encourage the board to take a strong stance against any legislation that would allow athletic trainers to essentially practice acupuncture here without licensure. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other public comment in the room, we will go to the virtual comments, please.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. We have a couple requests. First, I have Christy Vitiello. And Christy, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I do want to publicly comment. I agree with the last comment. I do think that the board needs to basically, it's the athletic trainer bill that's going on, that's AB 796. They are treating with the needle in Berkeley. We just saw it done in Stanford. And sorry, I'm in the wind. And we need the board to pursue action against this, because according to our bylaw, according to our scope of practice, no other profession should handle the needle without proper training. And the PTs know they can't do it, and now the athletic trainers are like, doesn't matter, they're doing it no problem. So I would definitely like the board to take more action against this. And there is a bill, the athletic trainers are trying to get a scope of practice, and I do think that the board needs to be in participant with making sure they cannot do dry needling. So thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next we have Neil Miller. And Neil, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Neil Miller from Cal Atma. I have a couple of comments. The last agenda item, or the previous agenda item regarding the strategic plan, you put a motion on the floor, you had a second, you have a discussion, and you open up for public comment. Both public comments said the same thing. And then you go ahead and vote without paying any attention to what the public comment is. So what's the point of making public comment if you're not going to include public comment on a motion that's on the floor? I would hope that we would get the respect coming from the public, that you could at least open it up and say, we've heard a couple of comments from the public, and the public is saying the same thing. Maybe we should listen to what the public comment was. The public comments supported the strategic plan as it was done during the strategic plan. That's one comment. And my other comment is about this AB 174 regarding the athletic trainers. Unfortunately, the staff, it was on a bill last year and it didn't get picked up. I guess the staff missed it this year. It wasn't in the agenda, so we can't talk about it. I thought we could talk about it because we were talking about all legislation. You didn't have to mention that specific bill. So in the future, maybe we could say these bills and any other bills that come up, we could at least discuss it, or at least have the public bring it up so you could get some sort of comment on it. A similar issue happened when
30 seconds.
When the natural, I'd like to get an extra 30 seconds if I could. When the naturopathic doctors tried to sunrise their bill, the acupuncturist got together with the author, John Burton, and we put in very specific language that prohibited them from doing dry needling. I have submitted that same language to staff to be distributed to the board, and maybe the board could take action, and that action would be to write a letter to the medical board, because the athletic trainers are not getting in their independent board. They're just being sun-risen, and they will be a subcommittee of the medical board. So they will be under the purview of the medical board. So I think it is within the responsibility for the acupuncture board to communicate that we are seeing athletic trainers at some of the universities doing acupuncture, and we want to be very clear that the law does not allow them to do acupuncture, and to submit language that was used with the naturopaths that stopped them from doing acupuncture. And I'd like to point out that
This is the moderator. The time is up. We'll be moving on to the next individual who has requested public comment.
do I have to ask for a second public comment for another 30 seconds?
I will defer to the board president.
Yeah, can you just wrap it up in 15 seconds, Neil?
Sure. AB 174 was a bill that made it unprofessional conduct for a medical doctor or any other healthcare provider to supervise or recommend acupuncture to anybody that wasn't a physician, medical doctor, or acupuncturist. So it would be within the board's right to remind them that this is a law on the books, and that they would be violating law if they allowed naturopaths to do dry needling or acupuncture under their purview, since the bill is to be under the medical board. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment, David Lee. David, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
The Korean Acupuncture Association, KAAMA. I practiced in Ventura County, and I've been in practice for 25 years. Every year, recently, I hear from patients getting dry needling from local practitioners, physical therapists, and chiropractors. I want to add them also. They're practicing around me, and I get patients who tell me they've been getting dry needling from these people. So that's also, I'm against that. My association is against that. And I would like to know how I could report them in addition to the recommendations that were given. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next we have Philip Yang. And Philip, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Yeah, this is Philip Yang from AACMA. Earlier I mentioned about the bill AB 796, and also Sisoma also mentioned. We hope at the CAB have a position that to express the our point of views, that to stop their practice by athletic trainers, and also ACMA want to mention another topic we mentioned before, to get the education entry level to a doctor's level. Means a doctor's level for right now is a master's and levels is a requirement. If we get to the doctor's level, will be competitive compared with the other professions. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I have another request for public comment from Tiffany Tufty. And Tiffany, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Yes, hello, this is Tiffany Tufty again from CSOMA. I just wanted to reiterate what was said earlier about AB 796, which is the athletic trainer bill. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that athletic trainers are not going for dry needling in this bill. This is a bill to have a practice act, basically. What we're suggesting from CSOMA is that the CAB take an open position to support us in our endeavor to get exclusionary language under section 2529.8.3. Which shall say the article shall not authorize an athletic trainer to practice any of the following: medicine, physical therapy, chiropractic, or occupational therapy. It does not list acupuncture. I'm really requesting that the CAB take a position with us to support us in this endeavor. We will be meeting with the author of this bill on Monday to discuss this further, and just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. They are actively doing dry needling in major universities across the state. So it would be great to, we still tell our members to contact the CAB to report this. I know the police have been notified in some instances and have taken a pretty hard, fast stance on this. So this is becoming a pretty big issue for us in the state, and looking forward to rectifying this situation. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. And I think we have an additional comment here in the room.
Yeah, Michelle Lau from KOMA, Council of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine Association. Actually, during this issue that we're working last time, that when physical therapists, they opened a board meeting, and I went down there, the only one acupuncture representative there. So, and then we make very strong, and that day, I think Ben and Jay's there. So we make Mr. Kaiser 3 times. Initiate, say that physical therapists cannot do acupuncture, cannot do dry needle in California. If they do, that is against the law. So I think that we hope acupuncture board, as a stakeholder, we need everybody working together. See, like today, I think that we are not, when you vote, this object doesn't mean that we are not going to continue to discuss. We still continue to discuss. We want to have a national examination that will be helping us to protect us from other professions. They try to get into acupuncture because we have a very good education. Like the formal from ACM, they saying that we want to have a doctorate degree all over. That was almost 25 years ago. We worked hard on it. But now finally, many schools are already starting to have a doctor program. But we need probably do some legislation in California and make sure the education up to that level that can protect our profession, can stop all this kind of interfere from like a dry needle and something like that. So hopefully that we really appreciate everybody here, and we try to work together in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we can close this item, public comments not on the agenda. And why don't we move on to future agenda items? And I do think obviously one future agenda item for the next meeting should be AB 796. And I think that we as a board should obviously discuss that. And we can do that as part of the legislative package, or we can do it, however staff wants to do it. But I want to make sure that AB 796 is on the next agenda. And then board members, any other future agenda items?
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion on next meeting for the acupuncture education in terms of for other healthcare professions. That means we've been hearing all this dry needling thing last few years, and I don't know what happened in other states, but in California is now is happening. And yeah, I personally hear and then met some people got this dry needling. I guess it's because nobody dies, nobody knows, and at some point we know, but we need to, as a board, we need to have some kind of a educational standard. Anyone who wants to do so-called dry needling or acupuncture in this state. So I would like to pose, maybe we can put it in the agenda for those people who wants to do that, that we, you know, like in other states where NCCOM is issuing the certificates, but actually they lack of those peer reviews by those who are actually practicing in their states. But here in California, we have so many practitioners, but also so many associations, I guess. So I think it can be solved by having stakeholders meeting and get some more input on how we're going to handle this issue. Then I think it's probably we can come up with a good resolution, you know, or any other solution for this dry needling issue. So yeah, I suggest besides this the dry needling legislature agenda, I would like to have one agenda for education program. For example, I recently finished the sports medicine or team doctor certificate program by Korean Association, and it's all for those sports injury and then how to call is the real like emergency situation or just versus just doing evaluate the condition of the injury and then do the needling. Those kind of things, I don't know in school they have those kind of program, but I think it's time to discuss about we can have more diverse program focusing on different specialty to accommodate all these demands. Doing once they now everyone wants to do the needling, so I think it's about time to discuss them. That's why I think we've been discussing in the strategic planning meeting for this to develop all this educational training development. Yeah.
And Mr. Kim, I was reminded when you were saying that during our strategic planning process, you had wanted to have for a future agenda the Medicaid administrators to present to us. Is that still something that you want to do?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me that. Yeah. So at this point, we have less than 20,000, I mean, barely over 10,000 licensees. But as we know, a lot of demand for acupuncture practitioner in this state. So, and also we can promote the acupuncture, including all these other healthcare professional or any other professional to legally, practice acupuncture. We can come up with some kind of program to accommodate them rather than having them just needling under the under their in their wherever they are. So another agenda for this is we can request. I think we talked about it in the strategy planning meeting. Cooperation or coordination with the state agency who's operating the Medicaid program, Medicare program. Maybe we can have some coordination in terms of acupuncture promotion for the Medicaid recipients, pain management, treatment.
Okay, thank you. I'll just work this way. Vice President, any agenda items for future agendas?
Oh. I'm thinking while we implement the law and the ethics, so I heard Emperor College, Dr. Yun Kim said the school, the gentleman said the school already have the education. I wonder, how many hours do you have for law and ethics? I'm thinking maybe all the school should require and better before they go to the profession, they already have that in their mind, deeply rooted, and to prevent any mistake. So while we implement the continuing education, how about the school education for the law and ethics? And I'd like to know more information, how many hours? Thank you. Yeah, for future agenda.
Yeah,
agenda.
okay.
Yeah.
So future agenda, then maybe we can have that conversation
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah. No, mine's fine, and I just agree with the president, AB 796, and I know Bain's team, has been working with the stakeholders, but I just probably bring back report and also discussion. Thank you.
Wait on.
Is that clear? And then timeline, we can kind of work that out.
Based on the admin mail we just approved, these agenda items can be incorporated. We will do our utmost, you being president, to include these on one of the next two agendas.
Right. Okay. Council, do you want me to open up for public comment? Okay, we're going to open up for public comment on this item. And Jacques, if you wanted to answer a question, you don't have to, but we'll open it up here in the class or in the actual room, and then we can go virtual.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacques Marco, Academic Dean, Empress College. So WS 400 is the class Laws and Ethics. It's a 20-hour class as required in our curriculum. So it's every student does it. So it's 20 hours and it covers ethical issues. And of course, going back to some of the classics, even the Hippocratic Oath, different oaths that were implemented and their meanings, and also all the laws and regs, section by section. That's why they all are aware of the license. They are aware of the font of the displaying that they need to do, and all those details. So it's all there. I don't think there's an issue with the newer grads. So maybe the issue might have been for people that have been out for 20, 30, 40 years. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions here in the room? If not, we'll open it up for the virtual comments. And seeing none, we can open it up.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for our future agenda items, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we have a couple requests. First, we have Philip Yang, and Philip, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, this is Philip Young from California University, Silicon Valley. Previously, board member Yun Kim Chen gave the question about the CU unit about ethics, and we do have the ethics. I think in our program, every school have the hours of the education of the ethics. But but in the practice, still we need the continuing education. Even some practitioners for many years, they may forget the ethics, and plus the ethics is a very, very broad topic that especially in deal with some regulations and also beyond the regulations that's covered by the medical ethics, such as if you can claim insurance, then everybody know you cannot claim insurance illegally, like you claim someone's insurance, like your mother don't have insurance, but can I use my daughter's insurance? Of course, you cannot do that, but still some practitioners can do that. I've been teaching the medical ethics in AACMA for
30
several
seconds.
years. Yeah, but we have a lot of cases who just do it. Then we give the case analysis that give the lessons to remind the practitioners not supposed to do that, and so on. There are many ethical issues. That's why ACMA support the 4 units of ethics education in CEU units. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next, we have Neil Miller. And Neil, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for doing such a good job today moderating as the host. From the minutes of the last meeting, my understanding that today's meeting was supposed to be a 2-day event, yesterday and today. So I don't really understand unless it's budget constraints or something like that, but at the last meeting and at the previous meetings, there's been enough recommendations by myself, referred to as a public member or anybody else, that brought forth lots of agenda items that we continue to talk about, and they're not making it onto the agenda. So I was very disappointed today that the agenda items from the last meeting were not in yesterday's meeting, and then it was a 1-day meeting. So it's in your minutes from the last, but I'll just remind you that I asked for for future agenda items, same things I've been asking for the past couple years. An education curriculum competency discussion, and perhaps a subcommittee to further investigate those issues. Law and ethics, the Asian massage. We haven't discussed the occupational analysis in over a year since it's been done. Workers' compensation and what the education needs to be for us to participate in workers' compensation. Do we have enough education? So those are the kinds of things that I wanted to flesh out. We wanted to
30
flesh out
seconds.
by having education and curriculum competency. I know that you're all very busy, Mr. Chairman, but I hope that you'll, before you leave the board and move on to higher offices, take a chance to look at what we've recommended and put some of those on and maybe accomplish some of this stuff before the year's out. Good luck to you in your campaign, and thank you again, board, for doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Sure, thank you. On Mr. Miller's, a couple of those items, I mean, I do think on the Asian massage, that has been directly, I think, addressed in our strategic plan and will be coming before us. I think on the, just because we kind of do this each meeting, on the workers' comp issue, I'm not sure, again, I think we've kind of arm wrestled with this. I'm not sure how that really fits into our charge of consumer protection and public protection. I think that is something that obviously the profession should be looking into. I'm not sure as the board. Again, I think the reason why it hasn't been on an agenda is because I'm not sure exactly what the board would be doing with that. And then on the educational competency, well, there's the occupational analysis, which we discussed that a few meetings ago, and we had a pretty detailed discussion about it. So I mean, of course, we can have that discussion again. But from what I remember, it was, you know, a lot of the potential future discussion was about why the occupational analysis maybe wasn't as good as it could have been. And I'm not sure as a board, we're going to be able to solve that through a discussion. I mean, obviously, there's going to be another occupational analysis in 4 years. And then the last one was educational competency. Now, why don't, and Mr. Miller, and for any members of the public, I always do, and I have specifically requested, if there are really pressing issues that you want to see on an agenda, these are pretty broad strokes that we just heard. I mean, I do think an email to the executive director copying me or whoever the president at the time is really, really helpful. I don't think I've received one, have you received one? So maybe if, specifically on the educational competency point, to the extent that that is something that should be on a future agenda, please just write an email as to why, how it relates to public protection, consumer protection, and what exactly the board would be considering. So I do want members of the public to know, we hear requests for future agenda items. We hear them, we consider them, we put the ones on the agenda that we think directly fall under our mission and our charge. Hence, while AB 796, we just heard about today, will be on the next agenda, because that is core of what we do. So I appreciate the comments from everyone, and obviously, if there are important matters that should go on future agenda items, they will find their way there. So with that, I think that we're wrapped up here with future agenda items. The next agenda, or the next item is just adjournment. So would you like a formal motion on that, or can we just adjourn?
You can just adjourn.
Okay, so we are adjourned. It's about 1:15. Thank you, everyone.